Aaron, you all set? You guys ready? Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening, and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for September 19th, 2013. Tonight, we have three public hearings and two matters under old business that look like they'll take a relatively short time requirement. So therefore, I'd like to request that we waive the order of the agenda and pick up two of the matters that are just here before us, one for bond release and one for an amendment. If there's no objections to the board members, I'd make that in the form of a motion to waive the agenda.
Second
that. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So that motion carries. I'd like to address the matter of the remaining bond release on 61 Bishop Street on Berkeley Ave. Can we take you first? So you don't have to sit through the two public hearings, or three of them? How's that, all right? So we have the applicant request the planning board authorize the release of remaining funds relative to the infrastructure work implemented on the site in accordance with the prior approval by the board. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Well, we're just here for the
State your
remaining...
name for the record, please, sir.
Oh, Jeff Miller from Chelmsford, Mass. for Berkeley Development, LLC. We're here for the remainder of the bond release. Everything's been inspected and approved by the engineering, I believe.
Aaron, do you have an update from the planning department on this?
I do. I've been having a conversation with the city engineering department, and for the most part, it seems like the project is complete. There are a couple outstanding items that I know that Watermark, as your engineer, is completing. One of them is the as-built plan and legal description for the street for acceptance in the future. So there's a couple of details that I know the engineering department wanted to see on both items and are being worked on. As of today, they weren't complete. It did come to light, though, that there is a residential unit, I think it's the Lot 4 on Berkeley Ave, has constructed a retaining wall that's in the right-of-way, or appears to be in the right-of-way. And again, I know that the city engineer's department has been in contact with Land Tech, who is going to, confirm whether or not the retaining wall is in the right-of-way. And if it is in the right-of-way, it should be removed and replaced onto the residential property out of the right-of-way. And until that time, I would recommend that we withhold the performance bond until that's been addressed.
That had nothing to do with us.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we were done and clear out of there.
Yeah.
And then, obviously live in their house, they figure they own right to the curb.
Okay. So the city engineer at this time is not requesting that we do the release till they have further investigation on the matter?
I would recommend that we leave the bond, maybe continue to the next meeting. I'm not sure of any other remedy at this point other than withholding the bond to have this addressed, but it should be addressed before the project is completed and moves forward for an acceptance, because the city wouldn't want to accept the street with private property that's built on it.
Any of the board members have any questions or comments?
Aaron, if I could get a little description of what we're talking about here. It's in the right-of-way. I assume it's a few feet back from the edge of the pavement?
It's back of curb, yes, correct. It's I believe, between 6 and 7 feet from the back of curb. If the curb was put in the right place, and it's where the cul-de-sac turns, if the radius was placed in the right place, it is in the right-of-way. But sometimes it's my understanding that it's a challenge to get the radius in the exact right spot, and so it's possible that the retaining wall is far enough where it's on the private property, but we need to get a survey or something from an engineer to show that it's outside of the right-of-way. If it's in the right-of-way, it needs to be moved.
But this was all done after we were done and finished. That has nothing to do with us, because we were done and finished, everything was loomed, everything was inspected, and then they hired a private contractor to put a wall in. Because we were done. We had everything already looked at. I made sure of that.
But it affects the street by the city engineer, right?
That's correct. It's in the right-of-way, so it's a problem for accepting the street and going forward.
But
and that's
that-
part of the subdivision process.
That should fall on the homeowner, I believe.
Right.
Okay.
So what they're requesting is they're gonna see if it actually does fall into the right-of-way, and if it does, they'll contact the homeowner, because if
Okay.
not, then the city won't accept the street. So he is looking for further time to
My
clarify the
recommenda-
matter.
Exactly. My recommendation would be to withhold the funds at this point
Okay.
until, and understand that puts you in a difficult position.
Yeah, because
it's
it has
not.
nothing to do with me.
But the problem is it's part of a subdivision that was approved, that hasn't been, the street has not been accepted. And as far as
About
I
the
know,
street
there's
being
no other
accepted.
remedy. If there's another action that we can take to make sure that the wall's replaced that is more directly related to the property owner, the resident who bought the property, we'll
They wouldn't
take
request
that.
us not to release the thing until we know that the street's gonna be accepted, and that's a problem that could be. But by speaking with Land Tech, hopefully they can correct it, and then we'll find out if it's in the right of way or not for the next meeting, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm just looking to get the funds released for the work we did that was completed properly. The wall has nothing to do with us. I mean, the pavement's been done, the curbing's been done, all the rest of it. I mean, it's money that's sitting, it has nothing to do with, they put a wall in after.
Right.
Like, if this got released and they put the wall in next week, would I have to come back with the money?
Hopefully not.
That's what I mean.
Right, right.
I got
No, I
things I already
understand where
paid
you are.
for.
Yeah, I mean, this is holding up as a result of something that you didn't do. I get
Right.
that. I totally understand. Any of the board members have any questions?
Is this wall in a position where it's interfering with any current or intended future infrastructure? Is it above any lines? Or is it simply in the radius of what will
It's
be
in the
the
right of way,
public
but-
street?
Yeah, but the city doesn't accept rights of way for a public street that has infrastructure such as walls, retaining walls that are for the purpose of, shoring up private property.
Okay.
That needs to be on private property.
And did I also hear earlier that the description of this street and its boundaries have not yet been accepted by the city?
Yeah, the legal description of the street, that would be submitted for the acceptance process, and the as-built plans are being revised at the request of the city engineer's office. They weren't ready today, but I expect that they'll be ready the next couple of days.
So what's the request of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we follow the advice of DPD and we do not release the remaining funds for the bond until to be reviewed at the next planning board meeting, which is October 7th.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. So hopefully we'll have it straightened out for the next meeting.
I don't understand where I'm involved with that.
Because they can't accept the street, and that was a condition of the approval.
I know, but we did everything we were supposed to do
understand that.
on the street.
But the condition was accepting the street, so that condition hasn't been met. So hopefully it'll be taken care of.
Yeah, not by us, though. We did what we were supposed to do.
Totally get it. I got it. Yep. I think the board understands. Okay. Next matter, is anybody here for 391 Pawtucket Street? Nope, okay, then we'll go back to the public hearings. I'm sorry. 391. Yeah, but we're waiting. I'm waiting for, who's the applicant supposed to be here? He's not here yet?
I don't think so, no, I haven't
It's
seen it.
Joe Penoza, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so maybe he saw the agenda, figured he wouldn't need a few more minutes, okay. So I'll go back to the regular order of the agenda. We have a site plan review and a special permit for 142 Chestnut Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by 142 LLC for site plan and special permit approval for a project located at the above listed address. The applicant proposes to demolish a portion of the existing facility and convert the remainder of the structure into a 4-unit dwelling. The project also includes the construction of 24 additional dwelling units. The access of the site coming from Park Street. The applicant is seeking a special permit and site plan review approval under section 11.4 of the City of Lowell zoning ordinance. The parcel in total comprises of approximately 50,628 square feet of land area with approximately 42,880 square feet of combined building area and are located in the traditional multifamily zoning district. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, board members, George Cielides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell, and I'm here with my associate, George Theodoro, attorney, in behalf of the applicant petitioner. Mr. Piccioni is the gentleman right over there, and I think you know Mr. Hammer, and we also have another engineer on another matter. This is actually, as you well know, our first public hearing appearance on this matter, but we've made two informal visits to this board to run various proposals and ideas that we were getting along the way before you folks, so that you would get an idea of where we were and where we were headed. I should also, historically, and what I want to do is just go back a little bit by way of introduction for the general public who may not have heard about how this project came about and what we've been doing. The project came about when Mr. Piccioni purchased the property on 3 streets, Chestnut Park and East Merrimack Street. It's approximately 50,000 square foot site that currently houses a somewhat, I don't know if priceless is the right word, but certainly one of our architectural, historical structures of great value in the city. And then a bunch of other structures that were used for dormitories. If you recall, this was a structure most recently used by the church for some nuns, I think, who were living there as a dormitory, kind of dormitory and praying area. But anyway, and that property, when Mr. Piccioni first set out to look and see what he could do with it, was something that he came to his professional people to talk about and run his ideas by. And his initial ideas were to build single-family homes. And as we started to get deeper and deeper into this thing, I think, and I'll take the rep in part for this, I think that we tried to convince him that there was a much better use for this particular property in this particular area for what I call a classic old style development of housing that would fit within this particular, the confines, as you well know, because you've seen this before. I don't know how much of the general public is familiar with this. This is basically currently a walled community. It's probably fair to say, becoming an eyesore to the neighborhood. It's getting badly run down. Has been, through no neglect of my client, he's done the best he can to keep it in some decent shape for the time being. And a danger zone, potentially, for the neighborhood because of the nature of the fact that it's a walled zone that no one can see into, certainly not very easily. And this board knows that based on discussions we had at that time, we started getting the ideas to put together some brick structures. I use the Louisburg Square analogy, something that would be a very different, very stylish, very classy kind of development that would do more than just put houses or residents or something in there, but actually become really a neighborhood within the neighborhood that would be a real nice spot. So we started out, and because of its historical nature, we spoke with the people at the Historic Board and met with Steve Stowell, and Steve was nice enough to put together a meeting with some of his folks, including your member, Mr. Lockhart, who is, by virtue of his membership on this board, a member of the Historic Board, and if I'm not mistaken, the chairman of the Historic Board at this point now. And we also included Aaron and some folks from the DPD, And we wanted to do a little brainstorming session, which is what we did, walking through the place, letting everybody see it, try to get some ideas of what it is and where it's going and what would be its best use. Honestly, the main building, what is known as the Talbot House historically, is in pretty rough shape. Certainly, the attachment to the rear is of little value and in poor condition, and the dormitory on the East Merrimack Street side is, I'll use the word worthless for lack of a better word, certainly of little or no value. There's nothing pretty or aesthetically nice about that building on the East Merrimack Street side. So based on all of that, we engaged the services of both Hancock Associates, which is who's principally represented at this point, by Mr. Piznola, and we had also my client, Mr. Piccioni, has retained Matt Hammer to do some of the work for him on this project all along. And Matt has done quite a bit of the work there. We also engaged Gavin and Sullivan and started putting ideas down on paper, as you well know. And we brought those before both the Historic Board, actually informally, members of the Historic Board, and then later in a yet an informal fashion, but not a public hearing of sorts at the outset, to get more ideas. And we started developing what you've seen, and I can just quickly point to a few of the pictures that are up there, but a brick building, a set of brick buildings on either side of a private drive that would run through the middle of the property. At our last meeting with this board, the informal meeting when we were still kicking things around, it was suggested that two things. Number one, to try and reduce a little bit the number of units, and number two, to try and open up the way between what I'll call the backside, the East Merrimack Street side, to get a view through and let the public go through as well. And that, since we last met with you, is what we've now put together as the latest iteration of this plan. And if I could just ask Matt to just quickly point at the removal of two of the units and the addition of a new walkway directly from the drive down the middle out to East Merrimack Street. If you start with those two, if you can point them out right there, and the other one.
There was a unit here, and there was a unit here. Remove those two units, done, and now that's opened up and gave some breathing room to the three groups of four to also include a walkway that would also connect to the walkways opposite, the other side.
The nice part of it is it comes right out at the same spot where we've opened it up on the Kittredge Park side. So now, here's a property that's been walled and inaccessible for a long, long time, and we want to make it something that will allow, for example, anyone on the East Merrimack Street side to have a pretty easy run, if I could use the word run, easy access through this area and into and over to Kittredge Park, which is, as you know, almost a 2-acre masterpiece in the city, which all of the people in that area should have an easy access to, or make it an easy access to it. So, but we haven't had the chance to go any step further with this, and we're here tonight not really to ask you in this public hearing to make a vote or do anything about this. We're just taking another step along the way and another stage. I had the opportunity earlier, just a few minutes ago, to talk to Mr. Dacey and Mr. Ballard. Yeah, Bassett. Okay, and that gentleman. Yeah. And I don't know if there's any other neighbors here from the area. And I said to them, and I'm repeating it to you too, we really didn't talk to anybody in the neighborhood yet because we truly didn't know where we were going. I think you've seen that. There've been a lot of changes, a lot of iterations. We didn't want to scare anybody and say this is absolutely what we're doing and how we're going to do it. We're going to be willing, after you get an opportunity to take a look and comment about this project at this point tonight, to sit down and talk to them and any of the other neighbors and get a feel for the situation for them, from them. What I really think is significant, and I want to impress upon everybody here, is that, as I said before, this is going to be a neighborhood within a neighborhood. And yet, and if you recall, we're proposing to take down the wall on the East Merrimack Street side and take down the wall on the Chestnut Street side and really open this thing up so that, but at the same time, with a series of pilasters and wrought iron, really dress up the perimeter of those two streets, retain the wall. I'm taking some of Matt's thunder away from him. He's probably going to fire me for doing this. But anyways, retain that beautiful wall section on Park Street and have really a self-contained neighborhood there with, and most importantly, a garage under for 26 cars and a backup place at each one of those garages so that we will have every vehicle that may be required under our zoning available on site, never to use a parking space by those people there. Now, I know there are some people who will say, and I don't want to get into that tonight, it's not my intention tonight to engage in any kind of, I don't know what, I guess debate about street usage and whatever. I have a very peculiar situation. I think some of you know that. I actually live in Princeton, Belvedere, which is sort of diagonally across from this. So I'm familiar, certainly for the last 10 years, I'm familiar what the traffic is like there. I'm familiar what the parking is like there. And I hope that at some time in the future, as we continue to work on this thing, you can all take a look at what the traffic and what the parking is like in the evening time, because I maintain that we're not going to interfere in any way, shape, or manner with any of the other people in what is, granted, a pretty densely operated, a pretty densely occupied part of the city. I would also ask you to think about what single-family houses would do to this particular spot in a neighborhood that is clearly an apartment-oriented neighborhood, and clearly a situation where, based on prior uses and what this property had before, I truly don't believe that that the density situation, I mean, if you want to talk about something that's sympathetic to a neighborhood, what we're proposing, in my opinion, of course, is something that makes much more sense from the standpoint of sympathy to the neighborhood and what's there. So I'm going to ask Matt to present just a quick rundown of what's there for you, and then we'll all be available for questions. And as far as I'm concerned, as I said, we're at the next stage. We want to go back to the historic board people and run this by them as well. We obviously want your comments on where we are, where we're going. We obviously want to work with these neighbors and make sure that they know what's going on and hopefully reach something that's agreeable to them. So without further ado, as they say, I'm going to turn the rest of the project plan over to Matt.
Thank you. As we mentioned before, we took the advice of the board members at the last preliminary meeting. We removed the 2 units. In doing so, we've created the 3 group of units off of East Merrimack, and I won't go through the whole plan with you because we've done that before. But what we have done is we've had to retain Gavin and Sullivan again to come up with new architecturals, and that architectural is to the left of the schematic plan, I'll call it, because now that we changed the configuration, now we have to follow up with all the other things that we would need to do in that regard. That would be to go back to historic board, which historically we've done from the very beginning. It's gone to them. And how does any change in the plan affect what's been a layout that's been done in conjunction with the historic board as well as DPD? And so we want to go back and talk with the historic board as well as DPD, get their input to the new change, finalize the architectural elevations and renderings for that matter, and to come back before you and show you a fully designed project related to the change. It's not easy to just quickly change everything around when we start to change the original proposal for what we've done.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Could you,
Go ahead, Mr. Gemini.
I wonder if you just give us the highlights, you know, for the people who are down here for the public hearing. How many units are you proposing? How many parking spaces are there? You know, square footage on the units, just a high-level description of what it is you are proposing now.
Yes, so the existing Talbot house, which is located here, is going to have 4 single units. We have 22 individual townhouses, 3 here, 5 here, another 2 here, which is 10, and then 3 groups of 4, which are all individual townhouse units that are 18 feet by 30 feet. All have an individual garage with an individual parking space available in front of each unit. And each unit's approximately 1,400 square feet.
1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
A garage space and a parking space for each unit.
That's correct, yes.
What about the Talbot house? Is there any parking included for that?
Yes, there is. There's 10 parking spaces here.
All for the Talbot
All
house or those?
specifically for the Talbot House residents, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, for now, I think we just wanted to, as I said, bring you up to date on where we are. We're certainly glad to hear any comments that anyone from the public might have, and obviously any questions from the board, Mr. Chairman.
I think, so the first question I have is, these new sets of plans have not been distributed to the planning department, right? Or anybody else? Any of the 7 city departments?
Correct.
Okay.
We did have a meeting with Joe and Aaron earlier this week, and we talked about the possibility of making a change like that, but we have this all came about in the last week or two as a result of what this board indicated. I think it was Mr. Frechette who said, would we look at it from the standpoint of the number of units and the layout of the property and things like that. So we thought that it made sense to take out those 2 units and open that way that really, I think, makes a great difference in how the place lays out.
So basically, what you're asking tonight is for us to continue the matter, and then you'd have to give a new set of plans to all the city departments with new comments that come back at a future date.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody here want to be heard either way, in favor or against? If you do this, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, if you would, please. And I know we did receive some emails, which I will briefly read into the record after we hear from the public, okay? Just state your name and address for the record,
My
please,
name is
sir.
Brian Cowell. My address is 24 Nesmith Street, Lowell. I'd like to start by saying, first of all, I think it's a wonderful project for the neighborhood. I think it would improve the area greatly. I did have concerns about many of the walls being taken down. I do have reservations, though, about parking. You know, I think there's far too many units proposed for that site. I think I'd like to see it scaled down a little bit further and a little bit more, you know, internal parking added. I think there are other things we can do that may compensate for that, such as putting diagonal parking along Park Street, and even making that a one-way from Nesmith up through Chestnut to Park. That would increase parking along there, even making diagonal parking, which you wouldn't really have to do anything now except paint lines along the top section of Kittredge Park along Park Street and make that diagonal, and that would greatly increase parking, okay? Right now, the way it stands, you know, it can be a nightmare parking on those streets, and especially people that live around that neighborhood. You know, last week, if you drove by there, you know, I had to park nearly 2 blocks away. You know, it was impossible to find parking. So I think, you know, there's a win-win situation if diagonal parking being put along the streets on the outside, along that area, and that would open that up. Otherwise, I think it would be a wonderful project, and great for the neighborhood. And I apologize in advance because I do have to leave, so I'm gonna kind of say what I have to go, or say it.
This is your letter you received too?
That is my letter,
Okay,
yes,
thank you,
it is.
we appreciate that, and we'll put that as part of the record as well.
Okay.
So I think what's gonna happen, we're gonna be getting a future date on this, so
Yeah.
you can keep in touch with us
Yeah,
and let me know what the
absolutely.
next date is, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, please, just state your name and address for the record, please, sir, thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Bassett, 28 Nesmith Street, the owner of the property there and resident there for 30 years, abutting the 142 Chestnut Street project. It's good to see the site at 142 Chestnut Street being brought back into use, and I wish the new owners full success. I mean that very sincerely. That being said, many in the local community share my deep concern regarding the density of the current plans. There's clearly not sufficient common area parking within the borders of the project to avoid making the already limited amount of adjacent on-street parking unable to support the neighborhood. Even with the 24 townhouses, now projected to be 22, each having a garage and space in front, common area parking spaces are certainly inadequate for the residents that will be living there and for their visitors. The majority of properties bounded by Chestnut, Nesmith, East Merrimack, and Park Street have a need for on-street parking. In fact, some are entirely dependent on the availability of on-street parking. Once the spaces on East Merrimack Park and Chestnut are filled, where can vehicles be parked? The options are really quite difficult at this time. And there are some additional factors constraining parking in that area. One is there is no parking on any part of Nesmith Street. Block over on Andover Street, there's no parking on Andover Street. The project is next to Kittredge Park. Within the borders of Kittredge Park, there is a toddler park, widely used by the community and certainly needs easy access for vehicles to get in and out very frequently all times of the day to support that. Human nature being what it is, the residents of the 142 Chestnut Street project are going to want to often park on the street. Even though they've got the garage and they've got a space in front, you know, human nature is you're going to park on the street close to your front door. Everybody, all of us would do the same thing. And those spaces on those streets right now are really extensively used by the neighborhood. The scale of the proposed 26 units of housing will result in a significant increased demand for local on-street parking, and we really in the neighborhood consider it a significant quality of life issue. We've all seen what happens to neighborhoods when overcrowding occurs. If you were to drive early evening or walk around the neighborhood, you'll see exactly what I mean now. It's not obviously evident how many properties in that area need that on-street parking. So I asked the city of Lowell to carefully review the project with an eye to reducing the number of units and requiring additional common area parking within the project's borders. As we saw today, the 10 spaces that are for the Tabbitt House are really earmarked for the 4 units in the Tabbitt House, and that really doesn't leave any common area parking within the project. And that deeply concerns me. The speaker before me, Mr. Cowell, regarding some of the possibilities to make the thing more complicated by changing Chestnut Street or diagonal parking into the park on Park Street. You know, those things actually look like a pretty good idea. The infrastructure is there, I think, to really put a lot of parking spaces up there on a diagonal basis. There's quite a bit of room up there that could be done without a monstrous job. So I thank you for your time. and we do in the neighborhood consider it very, very important what's being done. But we do a very positive. It's a beautiful project. I'm sure everybody can work it out, and that will be a real benefit to the city of Lowell and the neighborhood. I feel very, very positive about what's being done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Tom Chin, and I have a property on 378 East Merrimack Street that's really almost directly across the subject property. And my concern, I'm not going to restate it, is basically what the other two people have said about parking and the lack of street parking, especially in the evenings and especially on weekends. There are a lot of visitors in that area that visit residents on the street, on East Merrimack Street, that park on the street. And many times when I go to East Merrimack Street, I have a very, very difficult time parking. Also, what I am concerned about is that if we have more high-density apartments or units in that area, the overflow of parking will go along the park side, the Kittredge Park area. Therefore, I think would make it kind of dangerous for children and families using that park because of the traffic and parking and weaving in and out of parked cars along the side of the streets. Other than that, I am very happy that there's going to be a development going on in that area because it is an eyesore, but at the same time, I don't want the value of my property or other people's properties who have been there for years to lessen because of the lack of parking or the congestion in that area. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in regards to the project? Thank you.
Steve Hatton, 35 Harland Ave. I'd just like to reiterate what the prior speakers have said. I have concerns just about the density of the project and the fact that homeowners within that neighborhood, we have to abide by codes and zones, and this is such a clear breach of that. I believe it's zoned to hold 9 homes, and they're trying to put in 20, 28, 26. So I think that should be considered very, very carefully as to it needs to either be extenuating circumstances or just show some clear cast iron benefit to the neighborhood at large. Otherwise, they should seek a zoning change so that anyone can benefit. If that is what the city wants to become and it's in line with our master plan and our vision for the city, then the zone should be changed rather than just making an exception for a certain project. It's such a large exaggeration of what the zone currently allows. There are aspects of the project that I do like, though. I mean, I do find appealing, but if it could be just a little less dense and there are a lot of rental properties in that area, but I believe that a lot of those homes are owned by residents, and this would be I don't quite get the neighborhood within the neighborhood idea. If I were to subdivide my property and go to my neighbors and say, I just want to make a neighborhood within the neighborhood here because I want to, get a little more value for the land, I would hope this board would say that's not allowed. You just can't do that. Yeah, I have concerns just with the density of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in regards to the project? Anyone else? Anyone else? At this point in time, do any of the board members have any questions, comments?
Right.
Mitch, start with you if you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of things just to, I think, one of the biggest issue here with some of the feedback we've received and after looking at it is the density of the project. You headed in the right direction here. That's much better, opening that up and doing that. But I went through some calculations for lot area per dwelling unit. Current regulation requires 4,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Your previous site plan, based on a 49,882 square feet, resulted in 1,782 square feet per dwelling unit. So there's quite a discrepancy there, and you've taken out 2 units. So I'm not sure you're quite there, but you're headed in the right direction. The density, I think, is the main issue here. Secondly, Mr. Dacey's email that we received, he had a comment for several items here. I'll just read one of them. It came out of some documentation for the project. He says, the project currently has direct adjacency to 3 nearby streets, Chestnut Street, Park, and East Merrimack, thus providing additional on-street parking for visitors. And then it says, we feel, meaning the applicant, we feel significant on-street parking will not be needed for the proposed project. Can you address that? I think you have a little bit, but is that based on any analysis or work with the traffic engineer or anything like that? Or, what's the basis for that statement?
Well, if I can, Mr. Lockhart, it's an interesting question, and as I indicated earlier, I live there.
Right.
And so now, ever since we got involved in this project, I take note of that every day. I have on my cell phone right now a picture that I took earlier today of Chestnut Street. And there's not a single car on Chestnut Street. Now, I know that's in the afternoon and whatever, but the afternoon is where the playground is used too. And so that location of that playground, there isn't the kind of traffic that you see there that generates that kind of thing. With reference to, can I disprove that a person who's going to live there? I can tell you this: in the wintertime, if I owned a garage under and a garage beside it, and I knew it was going to be plowed and taken care of, I know where my 2 cars would be. Again, I may not be directly answering your question, but you know what I'm going to do? To the extent I can, I intend to have pictures taken at various times of the day and night from this point forward that I think might be helpful to the board in seeing what it's like. I truly don't believe that there's going to be any increase in usage of parking there. And let me also say for these folks, and I haven't had a chance to talk to some of them before, if we just put in the 9 houses that this gentleman referred to before there, we may, and I don't know that there necessarily would be, as you know, our zoning code calls for sharing driveways in certain situations. But if we had put in the 9 houses that we would have the right to do, that could theoretically be 9 curb cut openings into both East Merrimack Street and Chestnut Street, and create all kinds of loss of parking and traffic running in and out of that particular property. We have 1 opening on Park Street, that's it. And I haven't had a chance to talk. I did get a chance to read. Mr. Dacey's over here. I grew up with Mr. Dacey. He's a little younger than I, but we went to the Oakland, the Moody, and whatever together, and his older brother, Dick, who was a wonderful guy, a teacher at Lowell High School. The fact of the matter is that with regard to he mentions coming out of the property onto Park Street and then having a T to deal with, which is Park Street go left or Park Street go right. I just have to make a couple of observations to you. I do the reverse coming out of Princeton Belvedere, by the way, Princeton Belvedere, and I don't want to get into who has parking and who doesn't have parking by today's standards or whatever, but there are 60 units there, and I've never had a problem finding a parking space. A 2-bedroom, a small 2-bedroom unit like mine and like these are going to be, very often you're going to find a couple who has 1 car, or a young family with just 1 car. I've never had a parking space problem there. But when I come out from my T opening, from the opposite side to Park Street, I have the option to go left, go right, or go down Chestnut Street if I want to go that way. If I park on the back side, on the Andover Street side, and like this morning, we all know what traffic can be like at various times in the city. But the first thing I did is I backed my car out as I looked what the cars were on Andover Street, and I saw that there was no backup there. This was at 8:03. I looked at my watch, so I was able to easily exit the rear, essentially Park Street all over again on the rear side, go on to Andover Street, go to the lights, and had no problem. Now, I know that's only one day and one time, but believe me when I tell you, I have, for example, never queued my car at the lights at East Merrimack Street to go towards downtown, and have never had more than 3 cars in front of me. Most of the time, there's only 1 or 2. It's not like there's a serious traffic problem there. That's just my opinion. That's what I'm telling you. So I think we all need to look at the thing and see. And as I said, it's a dense neighborhood, and sure, we don't want anyone to lose their parking or their rights or whatever. I'm quite confident, as I said, that most of these people are going to want to have their cars for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is you can arguably say safety, no one breaking in, no one hitting it, trying to go up or down one of those streets. I'm quite confident that we're going to have those people parking on site.
All right, I just, I think we need to see some, whether it's photographs or whatever, I think it would be helpful. One other item, did we ever receive notice from the fire department on the previous plan? There was an email here, but it wasn't clear.
Yeah, the email that was included with the packet is the only comments we received from the fire department at this point.
So they haven't really.
Yeah, basically the 2 comments come down to that, one is a note or a reminder, I guess, that the buildings would need to be sprinkled that's a building permit requirement under the fire code. And then there is a more general question whether or not there is adequate space for fire apparatus to make it onto the access drive in the rear of the property. But that's all we've received from the fire department at this point.
All right. And just one other thing, relative to the traffic engineer's comments.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
One
Mr.
other
Lockhart.
thing relative to the traffic engineer's comments. He talks about sidewalks being needed around the entire perimeter of the site, with currently no sidewalk along Park Street. And he talks about wheelchair ramps and all that. Is that?
Well, there is a sidewalk on Chestnut now. We intend.
No, he's saying on Park Street, there's no sidewalk.
No, there isn't. And the difficulty with that is if you know Park Street goes down at an angle, and that beautiful wall, which we want to save,
Right.
goes down about a foot every 8 or 10 feet. And so putting a sidewalk, Matt's got the pictures here, putting a sidewalk is not going to be an easy thing to accomplish there. Is it possible? And if this board said absolutely find a way to do it, then we're probably going to find a way to do it. I don't think, I've never seen anyone walk on that side of the street. There is a sidewalk on what I would call my side of the street, on the other side of Park Street. So to the extent the board feels it would be important or helpful, I'm sure that the developer would be
Yeah,
glad to spend some money and do
that
it.
was his observation. I just wanted to make sure that
Right.
we discussed it, that's all. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Mr. Fischett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to Mr. Lockhart's point, though, at this point, I can't speak for the traffic engineer, but he hasn't seen the new plan where you now have access through the site, which he may have a different thought on that. But again, we don't have the benefit of having seen the plan before this evening. I think what I certainly would want to see, and Aaron, I don't know if it's something that either Eric or through DPD, is if we could do some sort of a parking analysis, which we've done in the past. I think we did with the St. Jean the Baptist Church. We did a parking analysis of the neighborhood. I think that would be helpful for the board.
Sure, we could certainly provide the framework that was given to the developer for that project as well. Basically, it was a plan of the streets surrounding the project that showed dimensions for which, basically identifying the number of parking spaces that could fit on the streets, and then a number of counts were taken. We can provide that framework to be prepared and submitted for the board's consideration.
Okay.
And photographs, I think, also could be submitted to kind of supplement that.
Yeah, if we could, because Attorney Alides, I also have pictures on my phone, and it was on a Sunday morning on Chestnut Street, and there were 5 cars, and with my vehicle parked there on the opposite side, there wasn't a lot of room to get by, and I think one of the residents brought up a very interesting point. And matter of fact, there was a family enjoying that toddler park, or I can see where the concern of pedestrian safety, if there's going to be more parking utilized there. But I certainly have photos of, and especially on a Sunday, I thought that would be a good measurement of everybody being home, so.
Sure.
And I do have concern with Park Street. I believe, at least information we have, is that it's supposed to be no parking. Is that correct, Aaron? It's just that the posting is
Pardon me, I missed which street that was.
for Park Street?
I'm not aware of that being no parking there. I can confirm whether or not that
The
is.
traffic engineer commented on that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He said basically there is no parking on Park Street, but the signs are down, so people park
that's
there.
right, yeah.
That may be in an ordinance, it may not
Parking
be
on the-
signed.
Parking along the site frontage on Park Street is currently prohibited, but the signs are missing.
Right, so
I'm not
it's
aware of
in
it.
this, it's in the street ordinance, it should be, according to the ordinance, signed as no parking, but the sign's missing.
So I think that would be something that, I don't even, obviously the origins of that, how far back that goes and for what purpose, but whether or not that's still appropriate. But again, that's not for this board to decide. Unfortunately, that's a vote of the city council, but,
That could certainly be looked at by Eric. I think
Okay.
he was just pointing out the fact that that's a restrictor on the number of parking spaces that are available on the street, but he didn't look at as far as whether or not that restriction is still necessary.
right.
So we can look at
I
that.
think that has a bearing on
Absolutely.
parking analysis, obviously.
But you're right, I mean, that's a separate step,
Right.
but, I think if the recommendation is that from the traffic engineer, that on-street parking is acceptable, isn't gonna cause any problems, that
Sure.
could be accommodated.
Sure, okay, good. And then I certainly, I would have been helpful if we would have been able to receive the plans prior this evening, because really coming into tonight's meeting, I was under the impression that you really just didn't take any advice from any of the prior meetings, and we were going forward with what the plan that we had. So I will say, I do like to see, I did like seeing the adjustments that were made, dropping those 2 units, creating 4 3-unit separate developments. My understanding is, as I look at this, is right now the market is conducive to rentals, and probably the sales are starting to increase, values are starting to come back a little bit. Based on the quality of the construction we're looking at here and the design, at some point I suspect these will make attractive owner-occupied developments, that now you have 6 end units versus 2 end units, which will make it a much more valuable project. So from that perspective, I think you're probably adding a lot more value to the site by doing what you just proposed, and I think it opens it right up, where we had really a wall on East Merrimack, which was really disconcerting. Having said that, obviously density appears to be, the big issue, and understanding the nature of this project and the design. And we've talked about this design over density and what you can overcome or you can't. And I think that you're moving in the right direction on that. Certainly, I would encourage you to take into account some of the concerns that were raised here, and if there's anything that can be done to even further alleviate that, I think that would go a long way with this project, so.
May I make a comment,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? it would sort of a follow-up to what you were saying there. I think people have to understand, and maybe I didn't make it clear enough, we're not just going in there and building buildings for the sake of building apartments or whatever. What we really did, once Mr. Lockhart and the Historic Board and whatever people visited and started, Aaron, early on with this, was they said, we'd like you to try and save the Talbot House. So all of our plans from that point forward centered around how do we do that, and at the same time make it a reasonable and economic development and happy for everybody. That's what we're looking for.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I agree with what Mr. Lockhart had to say about the density. I think it's a big issue. I don't think you've addressed, I'm glad that you removed a couple of units, but I don't think you've gone far enough. I think that it needs to be reduced further in order to make it a workable project. Aaron, can you just clarify for me exactly what we're looking at here? So I think we have a little over 50,000 square feet total on the project?
For the parcel, yes, yep.
Okay. And, at the 4,000 land area per dwelling unit, that's about 12 units, right? That
That's
could be
correct.
done there in
Correct.
keeping with that ordinance. Okay. And the parking, so as I read it in the code, it looks like we need, for a development of this size, we need 0.75 spaces per bedroom or 2.2 spaces per dwelling unit, whichever is greater, correct?
That's correct.
So that would be 2.2 spaces per dwelling unit, as it's,
But, no, two spaces per dwelling unit. It's 1.75 or 2 dwellings per bedroom, or 2 spaces per dwelling unit, whichever is greater. In this case, because it's predominantly 2 units, it's going to be, the greater requirement, the higher requirement is going to be 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit.
okay, so as I read this, it says 2.2 spaces per dwelling unit. For townhouse development including 7 or more units, it says 0.75 spaces per bedroom or 2.2 spaces per dwelling unit, whichever is greater. This is on page 39, section 6.1.4, table of parking requirements in the zoning code.
Right, so this project is being proposed as 6 units on separate lots. The zoning code also restricts any multifamily dwelling project, a residential structure of 7 or more units on a lot. So to work
Okay.
out this kind of project, there is a subdivision that's required so that there's no more than 6 units on each
Okay.
lot, and that's why it's 2
I
parking
see.
spaces per
Okay,
dwelling
well,
unit.
that changes the calculation a little bit, I guess, but I don't know if so because this is being developed as 6 units on 4 lots each, it qualifies for a lesser requirement on parking.
That's correct.
If we looked at it as, the 7 or more units on 1 lot, then it would have a greater parking requirement.
That's,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, because I was calculating that you didn't have enough spaces based on that. But if looking at that, otherwise, sounds like you would probably have just enough spaces. Because it's 26 units times 2 is 50, is that right? 52? Yeah, and you have 2 per each, yeah, okay. So you have just enough spaces based on that requirement. But it is, I don't know, is a lesser requirement. Okay, so these, just to clarify, these are intended to be rental units and not owner-occupied?
They will be built in a fashion that, from a legal standpoint, they'll be condominium units, but Mr. Piccioni at this point intends to rent them out.
Okay. What about, can you, excuse me, could you take down that photo there so I can just see the map for a minute? And what about, will there be sidewalks internally? Sidewalks internally, okay. No, I mean around in front of the units at all, or? Okay, okay. And what about snow removal? Where are you gonna put the snow? front of the Talbot House? Okay. Okay. And this will be a private street, right? So it will not be cared for by the city?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I mean, I think that, you know, like a lot of the residents here, I walk by that site all the time, often on that side of the street, by the way. And it's in disrepair. Obviously, it would be good to have this site developed. But I think that, you know, we have these density requirements for a reason. And I personally would be willing to concede, a few more units in order to get the site developed. But to deliver a plan that basically doubles the amount of units that are required under the zoning code, I think is just too much. I believe that we can accomplish a lot with design over density, but you know, you can't design your way out of a neighborhood that's just too dense. So right on the edge of the Belvedere neighborhood, I realize in that immediate area it's very dense already, but to me that doesn't. So we want to make a bad situation worse? I don't think so. I think we want to design to the code. We should strive to design to the code, and I could see a concession based on the fact that it's an eyesore, it needs to be developed and that sort of thing. Could be good for the neighborhood, but I believe that this just goes too far.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Boyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also feel that the number of units is just not working out. And it's not because this board's opposed to density for density's sake, or because we're striving to hit some numerical goal, but because the lot is just so burdened with so many units that it's unable to be well-designed. For example, the issues of snow storage. You've got the ends of the street with just a narrow little green strip in front of them. The snow would be pushed, you know, where it can onto the areas you've discussed. But in terms of how plowing actually works, there needs to be something at the end where the snow is being plowed to. And the way that this lot is being laid out, with just getting those last couple of units in, you end up not being able to have a space there at the end to plow. And that same theme of there just being a little too much in order to gracefully address the problems comes up in a number of different areas. In terms of those, the number of shared spaces you're able to get in behind the Talbot House. You know, you just can't quite get enough shared spaces inside because just a little too much of the property is given over to the units and the individual driveways each need for them. Getting in those 2 units that don't really have a front anywhere at the end, because you got to put those 2 in there. You can't use that space for other things.
You talking about the 2 in the middle? Or
The 2 in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm talking about the 2 in the middle, but I suppose that also applies to the very end units at the ends of those driveways just as well. The basic principle is the same there. If this was a case where this was at or even just above the statutory lot area per dwelling unit limit, the board could probably live with that. But you are asking for a great deal more, not a little bit more, than a great deal more than the zoning allows. And what that suggests to me is that losing some units in exchange for a better concept that doesn't put everything right on the edge of being just enough, the parking right on the edge of being just enough, the snow storage being right on the edge of being just enough. It feels like we're being pushed up against that margin by getting just a couple of extra units in above even more than the zoning. Not if you went a little above the zoning, you'd be able to do all of these things gracefully, but you don't want to go just a little above the zoning. And we keep running into problems because of that. Mr. Frechette in his traffic study and his parking study, I want to get back to that. I think that is essential here. And I think we should discuss the scope of what that's supposed to be a little bit more. The comment was made at one point about a sidewalk not being necessary on Park Street because you've never seen anyone walking on that side of Park Street. Well, you've never seen anybody walking on that side of Park Street because this has been empty. And now we're proposing 20-something units of housing there. That's going to increase the pedestrian traffic that it should. That's one of the reasons why we want to see development. And so just as much as we look at the additional traffic it's going to increase, the additional parking it's going to produce, we should also be thinking in terms of the pedestrian traffic patterns, pedestrian uses. And I think that very much does necessitate sidewalks all the way around the project. In addition to that, Mr. Cowell, are you here? Mr. Cowell, who wrote the, he's left? Okay. On the face of it, I think there is a great deal of merit to this proposal about Chestnut Street one way and bringing in angle parking. On the face of it, it needs to be looked at in a professional manner. I would very much like to see that incorporated into this traffic analysis. And I feel that if that was going to work, including that, making that change within the scope of the applicant's project, it might ameliorate some of this concern that we all have. If there could be a considerable increase in on-street parking associated with this project, that could ameliorate some of the concerns of this board and of the neighborhood, perhaps. It's definitely worth taking a look at. The other point that I wanted to bring up is the elevation from Park Street. I see that instead of looking at a plain side of a townhouse, I'm looking at a side of a townhouse that now has a projecting bay window. I again go back to, if we were looking at a project which was at the statutory requirements for the underlying zoning, it would be appropriate for the board to ask for one level of design. But we're talking about a project which goes considerably beyond the statutory requirements of the zoning. Simply adding a bay window to the side, to a townhouse side that is facing out towards the public street, I don't think that gets us there. I think that most of the rest of my concerns have been addressed. I had mentioned last time the importance of the internal space here, of it not just being the pavement that gets you to your garage door, especially because there are these units which are entirely internal and don't have any front on a street. So far, I'm not seeing anything new from the applicant in terms of showing how that concern will be addressed.
Only because we didn't have time, Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
That's one of the things. We took our notes, and I didn't participate in the end piece change. I agree with you. I think it needs to be relooked at. If you recall, I said when I went up to Lawrence Street and saw the end piece up there that was a blank wall, it was awful. So we'll look at that. I think we can make a change on that as well and make that a lot better.
A lot better. If we're going a lot more, than the underlying zoning.
It's
And
a
I
great
would
sales
want
point.
not just a little more than a blank townhouse end, but a lot more. What I had mentioned last time is the idea that what faces out towards Park Street should be a front, just as much as everything else that faces out towards East Merrimack Street and Chestnut Streets are fronts. This requires a willingness to deviate from the determination to build exactly the same thing 20-something times. But there are designs that have two fronts for specifically corner units that have two fronts that would be appropriate here. It could even be worth thinking about making those corner pieces the showcases, making them larger, more attractive, more valuable units than the rest of the townhouses. Yeah, and I would, I'm going to, those are all of the topics I wish to bring up. I would just like Mr. Frichette's idea of a traffic, parking, and pedestrian analysis, a comprehensive one of what's in the area, what the impacts of this project are going to be, and what could improve it, to be looked at. And if doing this in a comprehensive manner is beyond the scope of the time and the resources that are available within the DPD, then I think that we should talk about including the applicant in doing such a study. Because I think we are looking at perhaps a slightly bigger analysis than just having Eric describe what is there and come up with some potential ideas. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Malovich, questions, comments?
Well, I agree with a lot was said by my fellow board members, but I still have problems with those interior two units.
Which ones?
The two that are inside.
At the very end, you mean?
Yeah, I just don't like them. I think they're there only to put two more units. They have no character. They're never gonna have a front. They're never gonna have you can put sides on it, but they'll never have a front door. I would opt to take those out and do some interior parking and some open space there for the community that you say you're gonna build. I really don't like that we're just stuck in there to create units.
I never thought of the not having a front door. That's a good point.
I agree that the density's too high. And in fact, I like the split of the row on East Merrimack Street. My proposal, I was sketching things out, I had two units taken out side by side to create some sort of community space, outdoors community space, so that the tenants could work, sit there, barbecue there, or whatever, not on their own property, because there's very little space of their own on these units. I agree with Joe on the end units. I think they're just, that doesn't warm me up at all, that quick design there. I think those end units are special.
The Park Street side, up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they should be articulated more. And that's basically, all the other board members touch on most of my other concerns. Chairman, I'm set.
Thank you. I just want to comment on basically, you know, all the comments that the neighbors talked about in regards to the parking. And if we want to start with the parking analysis, on East Merrimack Street, on that back wall section, tonight at 6 o'clock, there was 7 cars parked there. On Park Street, we've been finding out now from the city engineer that there's no parking, there were 2 cars parked there. So that was 9, right around, not counting Chestnut Street. So you can start with the analysis on cars that were parked there tonight at 6 o'clock, which I'm sure Mr. Chin knows because they're right across the street from his house. So, the other question I would have is, where would you, or what would you do for the trash removal?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Trash removal? How are you gonna take the trash out?
We were planning on having each, like every other homeowner, to have their own receiver, but we would pick it up. In other words, we'd run our own truck in and have
So you'd have a private truck go into each one of the units and pick them up?
right, except we'd use the same units the city uses or similar to it. And that way, we don't have to worry about hiding a dumpster or something like that. I think that program has been hugely successful for the city.
Because the only thing, I think if you did the dumpster route with, depending on how many units you come back with, you might need more than one. Because if not, it'd be tough for everybody to get to the one location for the dumpster. You know, I mean, some people would have it right outside the door, other people would have a hike. So, but yeah, I mean, I know what, you know, concerns some people have with the density. I think because of the advertisement and the calls that I received on it was, you know, looking at what we had online and looking for the type of relief that you're looking for. A lot of people had the concern about the density in regards to what relief you're looking before us for special permit and what you need before the zoning board of appeals. So, those are the only further comments I have at this time. Except for a couple comments, obviously, you did receive the comments from planning staff. I mean, some of those are well stated about the rear decks and the size of property, the elevations they need and stuff of those natures. In the ADA parking, obviously, and the handicap parking and that nature. And I'm pretty sure you're gonna do the sprinkler system anyways, like Matt in interior. Okay, so, I have no further comments at this time, knowing that you'll be coming back in front of us with a new set of plans.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if there are a couple more points I could.
sure,
if I could have
because they're
a
gonna
moment.
change the plans anyways and come back, so.
Right. First of all, if we are, as I was saying earlier, the elimination of further units would open up all sorts of opportunities for better design here. One of the opportunities and that might be worth pursuing or might not, and this would be something that it would be good to hear the traffic transportation analysis look at, would be, the change you've made has allowed a couple of pedestrian paths to go in from the East Merrimack Street side. Would it be desirable, or would it be undesirable, to have an additional entrance to the property from the Merrimack Street side? That is one opportunity that would be made possible if the density was to be brought down. Would there be value in doing that? I would like to hear, or would that actually be highly undesirable from the point of view of the city and the neighborhood? I would like to get Mr. Eby's opinion on that. And the second point I wanted to bring up, if the reason we are talking about having a project which gets variances to go beyond the statutory number of units allowable under the zoning, if the reason we're talking about that is because of the historic value in the preservation of the Talbot House, and the hook for why all of these additional units would be a good idea is because of the high-quality design of these townhouses, then I think it would be very desirable to make sure that the detailing on those townhouses echoes that of the Talbot House, particularly that very attractive ornate door on Chestnut Street, as closely as possible. If the rest of the if we're doing this to preserve the Talbot House, and if that is the hook, if that is the selling point, then reflecting the Talbot House as much as possible in the rest of the design should be a concept that should be pursued as much as possible. Yes, yes, that really, I'm sure Mr. Lockhart can speak to this better than I could, but that appears to me to be the signature feature of the house that makes it so unique and so special. And if it is the uniqueness and the specialness of that place that is the justification for how much you're asking for, then I want to make sure that that uniqueness is respected as much as possible.
Anybody have any further comments? Mr. Leidy, I know you said earlier at the meeting, you're gonna have to come back. Do you have how soon you wanna come back, date in mind? Or how much more time you need to, given the fact that you have to change the plans have to get to all 7 of our department heads for comments to get back before us.
Even though it's a short period of time, I think it's a good thing to come back on October 7th so that we'll see whether or not how we're all doing with reference to your suggestions, with reference to talking to these folks.
I think the main concern would be the new set of plans given to the 7 department heads, time they make comments to get them back to us, and then whether you want to make adjustment to those comments.
Yeah, we'll
Would
have
2 weeks be too short, so.
We'll have to move fast on
Right.
that, you're right,
Okay.
absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I mean, are you sure? Well, it'd be good. We've suggested a lot here. It sounds like, you know, there might be significant redesign. I think it would be good if we could aim to be ready to move on it at the next meeting. So I just, you know, want to make sure, it's only 2 weeks, so I want to make sure you feel comfortable with that.
Okay, the 22nd, is that?
Whatever you want to do, but I'm just saying.
No, I hear what you're saying. Better maybe that we're,
Well, one of the things I was going to suggest is I'd like to see if you could reach out to the Belvedere Neighborhood
absolutely.
Association. Mr.
Absolutely.
Hatan, who organizes it, was here tonight, and I'm sure he could set up a meeting, and maybe some of the neighbors would want to attend, to see what you've come up with, and, you know, make comment before you come back the next time. I was just thinking, in order to do that, maybe a little more time would be required.
so is that next meeting the 22nd?
I'm not sure when.
It'd be the 21st.
21st, huh?
21st of
Our
October.
meeting.
My math is bad, huh, Aaron?
So
14
that way,
plus
if you
7.
change the plans, if it gives you a week or so, then if the department heads get them back to you within a week or so, and if you want to tweak them and comment them in regards to department heads, you're working on them every week between now and then. So,
Let's do the 21st.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
that makes more sense.
at this point in time,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I had one other thing I wanted to say, jumped into my mind when you talked about trash removal. I actually think it's a good idea to do individual pickup rather than a dumpster. I think that complicates things. But I wondered, what are the residents going to do with those units when it's not trash day? Are they just going to, if they have no place to put them, they're just going to kind of leave them out in front of their units? I think it's going to look lousy. It might be nice if, while you're reducing the density, think about maybe some kind of storage area where you could
Supplemental.
put those
I
things.
think that's a good idea.
You're talking about those units being on the inside drive, not on Chestnut Park and...
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought.
so do we have a motion to continue to October 21st?
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until October 21st, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Good luck, and we'll see you on the 21st.
Thank you all very much. We're hopefully going to be continuing to move forward.
Before we start the next public hearing on Gorham Street, I'd like to jump to the Pawtucket Street project if we could. Have any problem with that, Joe? You're welcome.
Well, I kept seeing this Pawtucket Street, that's the end of the ones.
What's that?
All I kept seeing in the Hancock Associates. I want to be 21. Guess what?
I don't think I want to.
Yeah, we're just waiting, he's going to, yeah, so you can sit up. Look to see who it was, you know what I mean? But it said there, if I pull it up, you know what I mean, I think the vote said who won, but it didn't say. Let me get to it. Forget what it is, you know what I mean?
Okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, I went,
We'll cover it.
take this one quick. Probably would take a little bit. I think the lines would take a little bit. Okay. I just wanna, Okay, moving along on the agenda, next matter we're gonna pick up is the request for the prior approval amendment of 391 Pawtucket Street. The applicant has requested to amend the prior approval of the board whereby the project was approved with conditions to renovate existing building located on the site into 8 residential units. The applicant has requested that the board amend requirements under the original approval, including the proposed dumpster location, reduction of landscape open space, and the utilization of a bituminous concrete berm in place. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates, representing Mr. Will Susi in an application for minor modifications to the approved site plan. This is the Lambert House project. It originally was approved by this board. By and large, the project is done. All the interior work, exterior work to the structure. The 2 units in the garage have been completed, parking lot striped. And we're just asking for a few minor modifications that kind of relate to what Mr. Susi's doing with the building. He's selling it to the House of Hope, which is a nonprofit organization, so their needs are a little bit different. The original plan called for 2 units on the first, in the house, 2 units on the first floor, 2 two-bedrooms on the first, 2 two-bedrooms on the second, and 2 one-bedrooms on the third, with 2 two-bedrooms in the garage. Now we're reformatting the interior of the building to put a single 3-bedroom on the third floor, in accordance with what House of Hope needs. So it's a reduction overall in the number of total units, and a slight increase of 1 bedroom in the total number of bedrooms. With that, the requirements change, and actually we come into compliance with the square footage per dwelling unit. We had gotten a variance from the Board of Appeals because we were just under that. We were at 2366 square feet per dwelling unit, and now with the change in the unit format, we're above. It also changes the open space requirements, the usable open space requirements, so some of the changes, cost measure changes on the outside would be to eliminate the left-hand side of the right driveway was proposed to be developed with a granite curb and a landscape area against the building, and a little widening of the landscape area out in front. In that area, up by the house, we were going to put rollout units for each of the units for trash. That doesn't meet the requirements of House of Hope. They want a dumpster. So we've put the dumpster area in the back. The other thing that we do is, with the change in the units, is we have a reduction of the required parking by 1 space. So the dumpster loses a space, but we can develop a single dumpster for pickup, and allow us to save some money on the granite curbing, but still be in compliance with the requirements. We still have the usable open space per dwelling unit, again, because of the reduction in the total number of units. We still have the landscape open space in the front yard, which requires to be 50%. We had 60%, now we're down to 53%. So those minor modifications will help kind of get the project, which is really over budget because of the commitments we made to the architectural, keeping the architectural elements when we redid the building, and the use of quality products on the outside, the retention of some of the ornate exterior molding. So we think the house itself came out great, and we're just looking for these modifications to save some money, given the project budget and given the final disposition to a nonprofit.
Mr. Pizzanola, could you please point out on the plan where this changed curbing is?
Is this on? Yeah, it's on.
Should be the green light there, Joe.
Yep, green. So we had originally proposed to develop a curb along here and then wrap it into the back. This right-hand driveway gives access to the parking and the Spalding House Park, and also access into the back. So currently what's there is that pavement goes right to the building itself.
Okay.
And then if you draw a line from the corner of the building out to the street, that's the edge of the pavement. What we're asking is to just allow the existing condition remain and not develop that curb, not develop that small additional landscape area, and to then just modify the curbing in the back to suit. Again, we lose one parking space here for access to the dumpster, but that pavement line, that curbing line doesn't change. And nothing around the left-hand side of the project changes. As I said before, we've got a little reduction in because of that strip going away, we've got a little reduction in the amount of landscape open space in front, but we're required to have 50%, and we have 53%. So our lot area per dwelling unit goes from 2366 to 2704. Our parking goes from 17 spaces to 16, but we only need 14. Our landscape open space, as I said, goes to 53%, and our usable open space per dwelling unit is at 336. It was at 348,
And what's the zoning?
250.
Okay. And where are these Cape Cod berm in place of item 4? The openings, both openings?
We had originally proposed and had approved Cape Cod berm throughout the project. The only vertical granite was on this left side, which was to match what Spalding House Park did in their parking lot. So the right-hand side, which is off the property, but within an access easement, a shared access easement between Lowell Parks and this property, the right side has vertical granite.
Okay, but not at the exit on the west side of the property. Was that to be granted as well?
There was to be granite at the entranceways.
And now you're proposing to do that as Cape Cod?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Joe, just to clarify where Mr. Boyle had asked you, on the left-hand side is still going to be granite curbing?
No, the left-hand side is all Cape Cod. That was
Okay.
how it was approved.
And then as you exit the site?
There was some vertical granite down here just at to define define the entrance.
And are you still looking to do that?
We haven't done anything down there right now, so we would be looking to either to use Cape Cod berm there if it's needed, or to leave the existing situation, leave the existing configuration the same.
Existing configuration. Wait, when you say existing configuration, is that something you did, or are you talking about?
There's an existing parking lot there now.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we didn't make a lot of change here.
Uh-huh.
There was a drive here. There was and is a drive here, and there was an expansive parking lot on the left-hand side. When the Red Cross occupied the building, it was kind of being used as a commercial site with a parking lot. We pulled back, increased the landscaping along the abutter, increased the landscaping along the house and out in front. But there was always an entrance there.
I don't suppose anybody has photos of that existing condition available tonight?
Not available tonight.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Mazzola?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else here this evening want to speak in regards to this project? Just come to the microphone, state your name, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Stephen Conant. I live at 34 Barrisford Avenue. I'm also on the board of directors of the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, who are the immediate abutter, owner of the Spalding House. I think for the record, we should know that these changes already exist on the site. So I'm sort of put in an unenviable position of having to state opposition to something that the developer has already completed on the work. I don't think overall, and this is the first time that we have seen it, we were never consulted on the changes that were made. We made comments at the open space specifically with regard to the location of the dumpster, asked that it be moved from the left side of the house. In reviewing what I've seen, I was at the site today, A couple of suggestions. I don't think I have a problem with the elimination of the granite curb along the left side of the drive. And I should state, first of all, that as well, that we are thrilled to have the House of Hope as a neighbor in that location, and I think that's a fantastic result for the property. And understand that the developer may have gone to some extra expenses to make some modifications, and I think that's unfortunate, but I think also that we should not make modifications to the exterior. This, by the way, is next to an historic property, the fourth oldest house in the city of Lowell. It's adjacent to a city park. So the landscaping is very important here. I don't think in terms of the density and green space, I think that's probably okay, and I'd agree with the amount of density. However, the location that they have already for the dumpster, I think could be modified a little bit to be pushed back. As well, the granite curb, while along the left side, I don't think it's necessary. I think it would benefit from adding a little bit of the granite curb towards the back that's vertical. One of the things that's happened with the Cape Cod berm that they've put in is that there's a beautiful granite curbing that comes from Pawtucket Street, and it goes down to the park, and then it's carried up through the park, and then you have this sharp contrast where the beautiful granite curb ends, and then you have this extruded berm, and that's where the dumpster would go. Also, the dumpster location that they've identified, and this is the first time we've heard that there'd be a dumpster as opposed to barrels that were going to be there, is that the location of the dumpster, while it may look okay from the house, looking at it from perspective from the house, as you're walking up from the park, and the way that the pathway aims you is directly towards the dumpster. Now, it's going to be suggested, I know, that you could screen the dumpster. I actually think it needs to be removed, and that's why I'm in this unenviable position of saying, I think what you've already put in needs to be taken up and put in a different location, which is to be put it to the right of the units in the back and just push it to the back further. Take one of those parking spaces and flip it, if you will, instead of having the extended space where you now have the dumpster pad, make that the parking space and extend it further back on those units to the back. And I would say that at least to keep some of the granite, as I said, I don't think there's a problem with the left-hand side and not doing the landscaping there, but to at least pick up the granite curbing that's coming from the park and carry that over to the units that are at the back of the property, I think would be a great improvement. We're thrilled, as I say, to have the House of Hope. We wish we had been consulted earlier on this and that the work hadn't already been done. And we wouldn't be in the position of having to cost the developer some more money, but we cannot support it as it currently stands.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Anybody else here this evening want to speak in regards to this amendment? Anyone else? Anyone else? If not, Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I start with you? I know you were the maker of the motion the last time, then, and Jerry seconded, so I'll go to Jerry second in that order, if there's no objection.
Sure, I'm happy
Thank
with
you.
that. So, Aaron, can you clarify, looking at this memo, it says, site inspection was conducted by the DPD services staff on September 2nd to confirm that the site development met the approved plan, and that's how we found out that it didn't, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, part of, just a little context, part of the reorganization is now working with building inspectors. We're aware of when a developer or an applicant is seeking their certificate of occupancy, and certain projects of this scale and up will go out and inspect them to make sure that conditions or the site was developed, because often the site isn't something that the building inspector is going to be looking at.
Right. So when you say that you're here to request some changes to the plan, you're here to request permission to forgiveness for basically not following the plan that we approved. That's a better, you don't have to respond to that. I think that's clear.
That's correct.
You know, this board, we spend a lot of time here. You know, everybody takes this role seriously. We go out, we visit the sites. We labored over this project because we knew, you know, it was kind of on the edge of being, you know, what we like to see, but it was a good project. It was going to be developing that building in concert with what we had next door in the park and the Spalding House. And it drives me crazy when we do that and we put conditions on a project, and then people just go out and do whatever they want. You know, I realize you were over budget, but when you realize that, you should have come back to us in propose what you wanted to do, the changes you wanted to do. Not do whatever you want to do, and then come back and say, oh, is this okay? In my opinion, it's not okay. I feel like we need to put our foot down as a board and say, that's not acceptable. You can't just go do whatever you want. Now, some of the things that you have done, actually, I see as positive. The reduction in density, the increase in open space, that's all good stuff. And had you come to us in advance and told us about that, I think we would have been receptive to that. But to do it after the fact, I just think is unacceptable. I agree with Mr. Conan. I think you got to move that dumpster, put it in a place that's more appealing. I'm not okay with, I'm a big vertical granite curb guy. We approved a plan with vertical granite curb. I think you should maintain the vertical granite curb and not use Cape Cod berm. Cape Cod berm, that's not bituminous, right? It is. So it's bituminous Cape Cod berm, like asphalt? Okay, so I think that's a problem. That's going to get torn up and look terrible, along the side of that property. As well as, I like the idea of having the vertical granite on the entrance and exit there as well. So, I am not of the mind that these are changes that I'm willing to approve. I'd like to see you, I'd like to see us, I guess at this point, what needs to be done is come up with a compromise, something that satisfies the abutters, satisfies the board, and with an eye toward what you've done there now. So I'm not exactly sure where to go from there, but I'm not happy that we have to do this after the fact. I think that dumpster's got to be moved. I think we need to keep the vertical granite curb, and I guess I'll stop talking there.
Just a point of clarification on the granite curbing. The approved plan had granite curbing in the back here, transitioning from the Spalding House Park to the beginning of these 3 parking spaces, and along the left side of the entrance drive and around the rounding to the back of the unit. From that point all the way around was approved as Cape Cod, except for the vertical granite that was at the definition of the, or more clearly defining the left entrance or the exit.
Mr. Fischett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have to share with Mr. Gendron the thoughts on, and from time to time this has happened, and again, a lot of work goes into the original approval on a project, and if there's going to be some revisions, the expectation is that the petitioner would come back to DPD, and therefore DPD would send that back to the board in order for us to be reviewing that and not after the fact. And it almost, it reeks of old school where, again, you do it and then you ask for forgiveness. Easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, as they say. So obviously that's clearly a concern. I have to agree, an important element of this project was the fact that it did abut the Spalding House, and a lot of consideration was taken into account as to how that would interact that site and complement that site. And I think the granite curbing was, obviously, with the elimination of the sidewalk on the right side of the building, I think that's fine, but it was clear the intent of the granite curbing on the rear portion of the site. Joe, does it make sense from a functional standpoint? Because I had actually looked at this and I came up with the same thought as Mr. Conan, is that if the dumpster was moved to the, basically the last parking space, or the parking space next to the garage, across there, I mean, would that be a functional spot for that? And is there a way that would, you could screen that and that would be functional for a...
It would be functional. It'd be a little bit harder to get in and out of, but the other issue there is because of the nature of the lot, and the jog in the lot, and the definition of usable open space with the preclusions on being so far from the property line, and the fact that it's got to be a minimum of 15 by 15. The usable open space is defined by this rectangle here and by this rectangle here, and the dumpster is in an area that doesn't qualify as usable open space. So we would have to look at the impacts of moving the dumpster on that usable open space, on that 458 square feet.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear, Joe. I don't mean moving the dumpster there, I mean moving the dumpster to the other side of the garage, right there.
Okay. Certainly, we'll take a look at that.
I mean, yeah, because I'm assuming any truck that would be coming in, they'd have to come in. They're actually going to have to do that loop anyways, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they could come in and then loop out of there.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. They could do a front pick,
Right.
back up, and then
Right.
back up.
That was my original thought when I looked at that.
Okay. I misunderstood. I
Yeah,
thought
no,
it
that's
was
fine.
moving it over
And
here
that way they
rather
haven't
than
takes it
line
completely out of that corner,
block.
moves it over.
To be clear, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, but the place that I was suggesting was not to the left of the building, but further back, as you stated, just push to the,
Into the usable open space? But I'm thinking, Mr. Conan, from the prospect of coming up that path, by taking it out of that corner completely, then that's not even an issue, and then moving it to the other side of the garage.
agreed. But that is much more isolated in the back there, and if it worked better for the developer, we'd be comfortable with that. I think over to the left of the building, it maybe creates some visual issues that
When you
might
exit the,
compromise, yeah, when you move
yeah,
it to the left.
the other
and
consideration, sure.
There's a back entrance to the building there, so, I mean, I think it's just unfortunate that we weren't consulted earlier on this.
Right, right. Well, I, for one, would certainly, and I think there's two things we're looking for. First of all, is this is a material and substantial change to the original plan. But I think the granite curbing was an integral part of even from a functional standpoint, and I think even from the House of Hope's perspective, from their viewpoint, once you put that granite, it's final, and it's not, it's not going to be an issue where there's going to be maintenance and the plow trucks are going to tear it up in the future and it's going to deteriorate. I mean, you're going to have that granite, I think, from that perspective, and I think visually entering and exiting from the Spalding House, I think obviously that adds a lot to that site. And clearly from the road on Pawtucket Street, we've been very consistent, I think, with every project that's come before us. If there's anything that's on the street, we're looking for the vertical granite curbing. I don't think we've wavered on anything that's come before us on that issue. Those are, I don't feel what you're proposing is, and it's interesting. What you're showing us you already did, I'm not happy with. What you're proposing is not, I think, a material change, but I'm not prepared to approve what I've got before me here. So I certainly would have no problem with the fact that it's not a material change, not requiring another public hearing. However, I think that there needs to be, those items need to be addressed.
Thank you. Now, I know when we approved this, the vote was 4 in favor, so we only had 4 people that night. So I know it was Mr. Genman, Mr. Vichette, myself. Was Joe, were you here that night?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go back to you. Do you have any comments at this point? Because I know
I was not.
you weren't here and Bob wasn't here, so I'll just stick with the 4 for the change, and then they weren't here to vote last time. So I'll go to you, Joe, and then I'll come back to me if that's okay with the board.
On the original plan, there was going to be vertical granite curbing along the side of the house. Yes. where was that going to turn into Cape Cod berm?
At the end of the rounding.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll just incorporate by reference the previous two members' thoughts about coming in with alterations from the plan already in place. I feel the same way. In the applicant's defense, changing those two one-bedroom units to a single three-bedroom unit not only improves the project in terms of its usefulness and its societal benefit as the House of Hope, also brings the project closer into zoning compliance. I think that is worth something as we consider this. I think that gets you the granite curbing along the west side of the entrance driveway. Dumpster needs to be moved, as suggested by Mr. Conant. On the other hand, the granite curbing along the back near that dumpster area, continuing along to the point shown on the original plan, I think we should stick with that. Now, the entrances. There was a reference to existing conditions. There are already granite cornerstones in the street that you haven't touched. What's there?
Yeah, what happens now is the granite curbing dies out. It's tapered.
It slopes, okay.
We'll have to check back and see exactly what staff input was. Mr. Eby may have gotten involved to want to more clearly define the entrances. So we'll circle back on that, understand it, and then come back. But we've heard loud and clear from the board position on the dumpster, on the curbing transition, on the use of materials in the public street, and we'll make those changes to the plan.
Speaking only for myself, I am not... Okay, we are no longer talking about Cape Cod berm at the entrances to the driveways. Okay. Okay. All right, then.
The only comment I have is I believe on the left side, if you want to call it, that should be the vertical granite coming in. I agree with the other board members about moving the dumpster over, and there should definitely be the granite curbing in the rear. And on the front coming in the right, I'm up in the air on that, so, whether that be a compromise. I mean, I'm glad to see that some of the improvements that you did by, for the parking and the minimum usable open space and the area unit dwelling has increased. That definitely helps the project, but I think I think a lot of consideration was given to the aesthetics of what the outside of the project would look like. So, but those are my comments. So the first thing I'd suggest is, first motion we need would be whether this is a material substantial change and whether they have to come back for a public hearing or not. So, when we start with that part of the board.
Mr. Chairman, can I, just from a procedural standpoint, it sounds like we're getting ready to delay this or something, right, or send it back?
Well, I think the first question, let's decide if it's a material substantial change, because then we have to start another whole public hearing or not.
Right.
So we can vote on that first and then decide which way we want to go.
If we're going to
from there
send them
for the
back
approval.
to make changes to the plan, though, do we want to delay also the vote on material and substantial change, or, because we really don't have the change at this point?
Well,
Because
I
if they're
think-
going to come back with a new plan, that it's going to be, the dumpster's going to be in a different location, the changes are going to be different, so I'm just wondering if we should wait on the
I
vote.
don't have a problem either way.
You know, I defer to you, I'm just wondering what the.
Yeah, I mean,
best thing to do.
Joe, you know what type of changes you're gonna make, or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I think what I'm looking at doing is changing out this section of curb here from Cape Cod to Granite, to look at the relocation of the dumpster and its impact on the usable open space, with the goal of maintaining compliance. We do have, as I said, some additional usable open space per dwelling unit to work with. And look at and talk to staff about the entranceways and what their original thoughts were on that, and make those changes to the plan and bring it back on October 7th.
Mr. Chairman, I just, again, the nature of those changes, even if you were coming before us, even asking for the board input, and so you were looking to make those changes, I think is, looking at it, I don't view it as substantial material from the original approval. I understand Mr. Genron's concern, but ultimately, we haven't approved what you're presenting. We're just, the concept of what's being presented here is not, you know,
So, and I
materialized.
agree with you,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like material substantial, I'm just wondering if procedurally we should wait on the
I
whole thing.
think we could do it either way. We could, bring it all back at once and take a look, and then, because then if the changes are made, sounds like he's gonna try to make the changes to incorporate some of our concerns. So it really doesn't matter to you either way if we vote for the material change tonight or not. I mean, obviously you don't want us to say it is, and start for public hearing, start all
We've got to
over
come
again.
back, and I think I'm hearing,
Okay,
by and large, that we're not heading for a public hearing.
okay.
We'll work with Lowell Parks, consult with them as we're coming up with a plan for the dumpster, and the materials for that, to consider that. And I think at that juncture,
We can make the
we
change.
only reinforce the minor nature of the changes.
So I think, Steve, we could just continue the whole matter to that date, and then we'll see what the other change would be, and hopefully it's more conforming and be less of a material change.
Right, and I just want to add that personally, I'd like to see the vertical granite curb on the west side as well, not the Cape Cod bituminous, but just,
So can we entertain a motion to continue?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue to, and Jody, is the October 2nd,
7th, I think it is.
7th, is that fine?
That'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll make
Plenty of
motion
time to make these changes.
to continue to the October 7th meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion made in second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Good luck, thank you. Okay, the next matter will be the Gorham Street project on the Butler School. We can set that up.
Did we announce this particular thing yet, Mr.?
Yeah, I'm just gonna let them set up for 1 second to get them, so we can get all our plans back out.
Okay.
We have a few pieces of paper here.
Who's book?
Here we go, okay. Motion to adjourn?
And a Sarge could run a pallet tonight.
I think they're gonna make it the Wildcat, but they did one game for Wildcat.
Take the magic numbers one.
To win the division, to win the division, I mean. Okay, moving along, the next matter is a site plan review and definitive subdivision for 812 Gorham Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing regarding an application by the Butler School LLC for approval of a definitive subdivision plan of a 58,683 square foot property located at the above address, and site plans of Lot 1 comprising of 26,360 square feet of property, and Lot 2 comprising of 914 square feet of property. The proposal includes extension of the right-of-way of Newell Street from Livingston Street to Gorham Street, creating 2 new commercial lots. The project also includes the construction of 9,140 square foot retail building with associated parking and landscape lots, and, landscape areas on Lot 1, and a 7,380 square foot retail building with associated parking and landscape areas on Lot 2. The site is located in a traditional mixed-use zoning district. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, board members, George Cielides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell, and I'm here this evening with Mr. Theodoro and Mr. Hammer again. We're adding to the team Eric Swanson down there, and I think you're all familiar with Mr. Jonkus, who's been with us previously on this matter. And I know Frank King is not on the team per se, but he's down here watching what's going on, so you'll probably hear from him too. We've talked informally about this one, and I think we fine-tuned this. We've made a lot of progress. Aaron and his staff have been very helpful. Steve's been meeting with the design review committee quite a bit. There's been a lot that's gone into this. I'm going to take a break and let George Theodoro give you the information on this, because he's been working hard on it too, and you're probably sick of hearing from me tonight anyway, so thank you, but I'll be around if there's any questions too.
Good evening, George Theodoro, 133 Market Street, Lowell. As Attorney Elides said, this is a project that started, our client was the winning bidder in a RFP. There are aggressive, very aggressive guidelines that and scheduling that they have to commit to develop this project. We had to purchase it by the spring of 2013, which we did. Immediately demolish the building, which was the old Butler School. And the Butler School there was on Gorham Street was an eyesore for years there, and a detriment to the community there. And our client, at his cost, demolished the school, and then aggressively worked with the team, with Mr. Jonkus, engineer Matt Hammer, and Eric Swanson, and put together a development in that area, a proposed retail development, and aggressively marketed the area for the tenants that we were looking for to support the infrastructure and the improvements that are going to be created here on this site. And we were here before you 2 weeks ago informally, and one of the requirements of this development here is the creation of the street, which is the Newhall Street extension, which is being done with porous pavement. It's the first street in the city that is going to be constructed with porous pavement. And the significant portion of this is the access that this street is going to give on the other side of Newhall Street, principally to the area there where the former Prince Macaroni plant used to be, which is going to be direct access to that area, which we've been in discussions with Mr. McCallum, which he's very pleased with. Also, we've been lucky enough to attract a national tenant through the efforts of Mr. Steve Jonkus, and we're happy to we can finally show you some of the renderings on that. But a number of meetings have gone into this with DPD and the city RFP team. A number of meetings of tweaking this plan and changing it, and also at the same time, what has to be done with this plan is to satisfy the requirements of the retail tenant that is going to be leasing this property. And we feel we've also done a good balancing with meeting their needs and also creating some of the areas there for the pedestrian access that we have, and also creating some of the buffer zones and the green space in the area. We've reached out to Mr. King, who owns property in the area, and discussed it with him. And we feel that this team and this project has done a very good job. So what I'd like to do for the technical part of this is have Mr. Swanson and Mr. Hammer go over the details of the plans with you.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to give a rendering to Aaron, so he has one of those for himself. So I'm going to go through the project from the very beginning, and that is the existing conditions plan here, where the boundary is here to the property, abutting Livingston Street here, running along in this direction, back behind these two residences here, running along down here to Gorham Street, and continuing back to here. Right now, the existing Butler School has been demolished, so that's not shown on the plan. And as part of that process, where the school was, they left that hole empty or excavated, so you'll see a large depression when you go out to the property. They properly had side slopes, and the property is completely fenced so that there's no hazard there of any kind. We went out and did an array of test pitting around to substantiate the drainage design. We have great sandy material, groundwater's very deep in the ground, and that was conducive to having a well-balanced site in terms of the materials on the site. The parcel gently slopes in this direction here, the grading, and as well as the grading sloping in this direction here. These are single-family residences here. Here, this is a parking lot here. And this is a multi-family dwelling here. And here you have L Street here, and there's this Lowell Fire Station across the street as well. This is in the TMU district. That district line is here. And then this district over here is actually light industrial on this side over here. This here is a TMF district, which is in here, where these residences here, which is traditional multifamily. And this is Livingston Street and Newhall Street here. Before I show you that, this is the subdivision plan here. And the subdivision plan shows the new right-of-way, which is going to be Newhall Street Extension. And this will be Lot 1 here, which is 26,360 square feet. And this is Lot 2, which is 23,914 square feet. And this right-of-way will be 35 feet in width. Shown here is the development plan, as well as what we now are very much in the process of gaining the Family Dollar as a tenant for the retail space on Lot 1. This retail space is 9,180 square feet. This fits the Family Dollar's footprint that's required for all of their stores. And coming in off of Gorham Street, what we have now is a porous pavement roadway. We originally submitted the plans to incorporate the drainage into subsurface infiltration systems on each of the two lots. And now this is going to be a porous pavement roadway. It's sandy soils, it's very low slopes. The elevations were the same on either side. It's a short roadway. It's about 1.5% pitch in either direction, and it was perfect for a pilot program to see if this porous pavement will work on public roads. It was suggested by the city engineer. We quickly agreed to try to do that on this. And one of the keys to that is to try to keep all the utilities out of the roadway so that the have a uniform infiltration through the porous pavement, and then you don't have to go in and dig into the roadway for utilities and so on and so forth to disturb this structural element, which is the porous pavement. There's an entrance coming in here to Lot 1. This is a parking area here. a loading and unloading area and a dumpster area here, which will be fenced, by the way. I know that was one of the comments in the DPD, and that will be a fenced dumpster area. We're gonna create a.
Sorry, would you say about the fence?
It'll be fenced in, the dumpster area will be fenced. There's handicap parking here. There's gonna be a proposed plaza here, so there'll be a good quality space to the entrance of the store. There'll be landscaping, a walkway, full walkway off of the existing sidewalk from Gorham Street. One of the changes was the addition of these 3 tree wells here. This rendering is incorrect in the way that it shows green here. It'll actually be sidewalk right to the building, but there'll be green at the individual tree wells. Okay. This is going to be another large landscaped area here, and we're going to have a flagpole here. There's going to be a street light here, in here, on either side of the roadway. Landscaped areas all around the entire perimeter of the parking areas here. A concrete sidewalk here, and completely handicap compliant for ADA. Coming to the other side, entrance, parking area here, loading and unloading along the side, dumpster area which will also be fenced, and a building footprint here, and a full sidewalk coming in off of the existing sidewalk, with sidewalks, by the way, on both sides of Newhall Street. I'd like to note that we have one rendering, elevation rendering of the project. So this is Family Dollar. This entrance here is viewed here. Coming in this way off of Newhall. And this is your streetscape along Gorham, which is here. The reason why we only have one elevation rendering is that we don't have this tenant secured yet, but what I can tell you is the same architectural elements that are along this will be consistent along here and the front as well. There'll be some differences, but we've been working very closely with the Department of Planning and Development for all of the materials for this, the design, and the entire layout of what you see now. I think this is our 4th rendition of this elevation, so we apologize if this has been changing from the original submission, but this is even still a work in progress. We've added awnings here above the windows, relief from the wall with these architectural elements here, and we've been coordinating the cement masonry unit type here, brick here, and then a stucco veneer here on the top, and protruding corners around the outside edges.
This may sound like a ridiculous question, but I just want to make sure, those are windows, that's not just an architectural element?
Yes.
Windows, those are windows?
Yes, those are windows.
Okay.
The gray?
Yes. Yeah. What I also can say is on the rear of the buildings, there's going to be what we're calling a faux window, like a fake window that looks like a window, but if you're inside, you can't see out of it, but it looks like a window from the outside, and it's very similar to the windows that were put at the CVS on Bridge Street. So those window elements are going to be located on the sides here, along here, and along these end of the units as well. We've also had discussion to include some landscaping elements along this outside edge, and right now we're trying to come up with a bush species that can sustain itself on a northerly facing side of this building, and right now we're talking about various types of holly bushes that'll be located along this side. And this side here, I know that was a comment, and it was generally agreed upon that because we have so much landscaping here already, that additional landscaping wouldn't be necessary along this side. I can answer any questions that you have.
Matt, could you just touch base on the comments that we received from DPD? Which ones you're in agreement of, or any ones you have any concerns on? I believe you have a copy of that dated 9/12/13. It came from Aaron, who's present with us tonight. I know you touched some of them in your presentation, but I figure instead of going one at a time, you have a copy of those, you can read those.
Sure, all of, and we can go through each one, we've gone through.
Yeah, if you just want to touch base on them quickly, I mean, either you...
The variances, we fully agree with.
Okay.
We've had discussions, and we've been trying to, show the pros and the cons of trying to work with all the different regulatory requirements related to the position of the building to the road, the curvature of the roadway, getting the vehicles in and out of the project, as well as, we felt as though this quality plaza in its close proximity to the parking outweighed having an entrance to the roadway here, as well as some of the offsets to the parking areas to the right-of-way. We do have a 35-foot right-of-way that's fully, it has the roadway and the sidewalk and the curbing taking up the entire right-of-way. So with the design requirements for the parking areas and the building footprints that were necessary for the tenants, we've had to encroach on some of the setbacks that are mentioned in the variance request. For the parking setback to the right-of-way, we've had to increase the width of this slightly in order to get truck maneuverability in and out of the property. And the width of the planted buffers where some of the widths are narrow in size. So those are variances that we'll be requesting from the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as the special permit that's required for the building being greater than 5,000 square feet. We, the maximum setback in the building of the TMU exceeds 8 feet. We understand that, and, the doors, need to face the front street. I touched on that earlier. We felt as though it was going to be beneficial to the project to have the doors facing Newhall Street, but with the way that this was all configuring, that we weren't able to meet that setback because, you have a corner street here. So we were against Gorham Street here, but we didn't want to have the front door to Gorham Street. We wanted to have the front door comparable to the parking area section of the building. And the same thing applied to here. One thing what we're going to be doing here is actually shifting the entrance down so it's closer to the sidewalk system on Gorham Street. So that'll enhance or lessen the effect of that zoning bylaw. But that's something we're working with DPD on right now. The minimum setback for off-street parking from buildings in the TMU is 5 feet. The buildings have areas setback from the parking from the building that are less than 5 feet. Refer to item 2. Yes, we have, we have done that in some areas, but again, we feel as though that the design is comparable to exceeding that. So we're acknowledging that. The off-street loading bay is located within 50 feet of a residential district and must be enclosed. We're going to enclose these dumpster areas, which I've mentioned earlier.
Do you mind just putting that briefcase?
Oh, sorry, Steve. I didn't realize that.
It's okay.
Take it off of the table.
So is the dumpster inside?
No, the dumpsters are here, Joe, and they're here, and they're going to be completely enclosed with fencing.
Loading and dumpster area.
The loading area is here. It's just an offloading area, and there'll be a door.
Okay, that's what's just north of that loading and dumpster area square, is the loading?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Freestanding sign should meet the standards of section 6.3.2.8 and section 6.3.2.9. In addition, if it's proposed to be artificially illuminated, we're going to make sure that we don't, violate any of the sign ordinances if we possibly can. If so, we would need to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance if we do. We don't know exactly what the sign configuration is going to look like. We've just shown a location of the sign here. We don't know if it's going to be monument style in low, which we're thinking it's going to be lower than 8 to 10 feet, because we want that sign to be more at head level when people are in vehicles, because we also have signage that's going to be on the building that's going to be raised up higher. So we're not talking about a big tall sign here, but we're still in the process of working through that. It says the planted buffer along the adjacent residential district shall be 10 feet in depth. Both have less than 10. We've tried to do the best we can, balancing out the building, the sidewalk, the parking spaces, the required aisle, and the parking spaces. But we're maintaining a 5 foot or more all through here and around. And then it gets reduced down in here slightly to Livingston Street here.
Matt, can I ask you a question on the, because it is a narrow strip, and I know it's shown as green on the plan, but is that actually going to be grass, or is that going to be more mulch and shrubbery? I mean, is it going to be wide enough?
That's going to be landscaped.
In the form of?
Landscaped island, landscape garden bed with mulch.
With mulch in the
bushes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I'd like to note, we've also talked about doing a larger snow storage area here as well. If in case there's more snow accumulation, we'll designate an area there to have a larger snow storage area. We'll make sure that the snow storage areas are identified on the plan. We'll update that. We're also working with the tenant for types of lighting. That still hasn't been decided upon, but we've just started in conversations with DPD as the type of lighting. We'll make sure it complies with the city ordinance. Mr. Swanson has talked with the water department, and we've decided that there'll be a water main that'll come in here outside of the road, and there'll be a hydrant terminating here. And we'll make sure that that gets addressed with the fire department, as well as all the water department comments. We've gone in and spoken with them, and we've come to an agreement as to what would be required to meet their specifications for that. We agree with 10 regarding the handicap parking spaces, the ramps. There were cut sheets provided by DPD, and we'll make sure we meet all those requirements and make sure that the maneuverability of the end of the parking areas, which are shown here, here, and here, get increased if necessary in order to suffice that requirement. We'll work with DPD in order to get that resolved as well. We added the 3 shade trees here, here, and here. There was discussion, I know Mr. Locke had brought it up, to put some shade trees here. We looked at doing that. We looked at moving the building, and that's problematic because it shifts all this down. And it was generally agreed at the DPD meeting that we went to that we would add 3 additional shade trees along here to carry through that element, but it was going to be problematic to put those trees here, but we are going to put those in here.
I'm sorry, Matt, would you mind going back to item number 10? I just want to make sure. You agree to all 3 items on item number 10?
Well, there will be the handicap ramps, yes,
Yes.
yes,
And then item number 3,
yes. And what that's
Okay.
doing is saying to increase this here.
okay, okay.
So again, like I said, we're gonna put some additional shade trees in, but we're gonna put them in here as opposed to in front of the building here. We'll provide some more detail regarding making sure that they meet ADA requirements. And Mr. Swanson will be working with DPD to make sure that that gets done on item 13. Item 14 really talks about facades and architectural elements and awnings and things of that nature. And I think you can see that we've been progressing in that regard, and we're going to continue to meet with the DPD to continue working on these plans. We got these plans in just this week, sent them over to DPD. We're going to continue to work with them. But I think that they'll agree that we've been working with them in just about every aspect of these architectural elements, and we'll continue to do so and make sure that we've been working in unison, that these meet their requirements. And we've been had a few meetings with them already, and we keep progressing towards the architect working with DPD in that regard.
I think the only one you missed, Matt, was number 12, about parking for bicycles or something? That
Oh,
was-
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little bicycle area that'll show up right here. And then we're gonna do a little bicycle area that'll just be indented here so that people can park their bikes to get into each establishment.
Could you just talk about what we got from the traffic engineer, about the emergency traffic light on Gorham Street that is activated by the Lowell Fire Department?
Yeah, so
I know we touched on that last time. I know you gave some consideration on that, Matt, when we were here last time. That came up as well?
Yeah, so right now there's two lights.
Yeah, this,
One light faces
Ashworth?
Ellsworth Street.
Right across.
yeah, Ellswood, I'm sorry, yeah.
Ellsworth Street.
Yeah. And then the other one by the fire station.
And right now, there's a pole that hangs over here, and that provides signalization also to Ellsworth and also to Gorham Street, so that if there's a fire, then everyone is alerted that fire trucks are now gonna be quickly exiting the building, so everyone's stopped.
Because the fire station is
Right here.
right there, yeah. Okay.
So there's a whole wiring schematic that comes into here to the pole and triggers these lights to activate when there's an emergency. We're gonna put that all back. We're gonna move the pole, work with Eric Eby, and make sure that the pole and the signalization for that emergency remains the way that it was. We haven't gone through that entire process yet, but we're in the process of
But
working.
you have no problems working with the traffic engineer on that?
That's no problem at all. Yes.
I know we addressed that last time, and I know you're working on that, okay.
I'll also say that, we're working with the engineering department kind of as we go, because this is new, this porous pavement roadway. And we're working with them, we're working with UNH, who has pilot studies that they do, and they're the experts on porous pavement. So we're working with Lisa DeMayo as to the pavement type and how it's going to be constructed and everything related to the drainage. So We've met with her a couple times to go over that, and we're still in the process of working through whatever it is that she would require, but right now, we're of the same mindset that with the way that this site's been designed, that we don't feel as though there's gonna be any issues that way. I haven't received comments from her yet, but we did meet with her late last week already, so.
I don't think we got them either, did we, Aaron? From city engineer?
No, there haven't been any comments as of yet, and I think that has partly to do with the request of the city engineer to change from a regular pavement surface to the pervious surface, which takes re-engineering and some more analysis, so there isn't anything from the city engineer as of yet.
But what I can say is we have submitted all the calculations, supporting reports. I know we're still working on operation and maintenance plans, but I believe that we can easily work through those with DPD and in the engineering department to make sure that whatever is needed for those operation and maintenance reports will be additionally provided.
And I think Eric also mentioned something about whether you can activate the push button activity for the pedestrian signal, and you have to look into that a little further.
Yeah, that I can't answer to that right now.
But you have no problem working with the city engineer on that?
Well, we can try to work through it. The problem with pedestrian lights and everything, it was something that was unexpected. But it ties into a whole new traffic signalization out here, because once you activate a crossing light, now everyone has to stop. There's all these timing issues that have to go into things. We're trying to work out that, you know, we're gonna have a pole that's gonna be going back over the street that's gonna be able to take a light. And we'll work with Eric Ebias to making sure that whatever the controls are in terms of the electrical box or whatever that's needed to maybe change that over later, incorporate that, can happen. So we just started talking to the traffic engineer.
I think you covered most of the comments then that we received. Aaron, do you have any additional comments or anything that, I know we had some from utility, but besides that, the water utility, but besides that? Anything else that we missed so far, or anything that you want to add in regards to the comments that made in regards to your comments?
I think that pretty much covers everything. I can just reiterate that the applicant has been working with the design review committee and DPD, particularly with the elevations. And there has been a number of meetings, and I think everybody's pretty happy with the progress as it's been moving
So
forward.
we'll need some further discussion in regards to the city engineer, traffic engineer, and architectural.
Pardon me?
So we're gonna need further development on this, for the city engineer, the traffic
Yeah,
engineer, and some of the architectural plans that you said you'd continue to work with?
Yes, we'll continue. Yes, exactly.
Is, anybody else want to be heard from the applicant before I open it up to who's ever here from the public? Anybody else want to speak in regards to this project?
I would like to, I'm sorry for
Okay.
1 second, but I would like to say that we did speak with the abutters out in the hallway prior to the previous meeting, and, you know, Mr. Jonkers could speak to his conversation with them, but we have made an effort to
Sure.
speak with them. We've made an effort. We've spoken with Frank King as well, so we've been trying to inch our way along with talking to the abutters whenever we can.
Steve Jonkus, 130 Warren Street, development consultant to the project. But the abutters that we spoke to earlier tonight were the McKinseys, who are on the north side of the site. And you can see that their driveway exits onto Gorham Street. And she expressed some concern because the original thought was that the building that's shown on Lot 1 would be directly on the sidewalk, and she had concerns about whether or not it would affect her site views along Gorham Street as she tried to exit. And we pointed out that the building is pushed back from the sidewalk 6 feet, and talked about where the car would be stopped, her car would be stopped in the driveway, and where sight lines would be. And she was satisfied with the explanation.
Steve, was this the older couple that was sitting back here?
No, it's the
Earlier?
couple that was sitting here.
Okay.
Not the
Another
couple, not the
back-
couple that you approached.
They had some question about Newhall Street, but obviously couldn't stay. But that does bring the point. Sounds like you have made an effort. I was going to ask about that, to talk to the abutters, or
Yeah, we're working through that process.
what does that mean?
Spoken with Frank King, who knows many of the abutters around the neighborhood. He's been gracious enough to speak with some of the abutters on our behalf.
Mhm.
And so we have been making an effort to do that. I know that the developer has specifically spoken with some of the abutters in the past as well, related to the ongoing process through the RFP as well. But I can say that when the abutter is in a vehicle, in the car here, that the building will actually be behind them when they're in the car, approaching, ready to get on to Gorham Street. There's 14 feet here. So someone who's in a vehicle is probably going to be back around 6 feet from the front of the car, maybe 8 feet, before they start to enter into the roadway portion. So we feel as though the building will not hinder the sight distance.
Can you come to the microphone and state your name for the address, please, sir? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Frank King, 26 Livingston Street, which runs behind the, Livingston Street runs behind the old Butler School. I think you might be familiar with the property, Council, the Crow family used to live on that street, which was my cousin's. I have some questions. Number one, how do you intend to have the trucks come into the property for delivery? Will it be coming up Newhall Street from the rear, or will they be coming off of Gorham Street?
Matt, you mind answering that?
Yep, the vehicles will be coming off of Gorham Street, coming into the parcel, and then exiting back out onto Gorham Street on both parcels.
As you realize, I'm in the trucking business, and I see a major problem having the trucks, not a major problem, but a problem with a tractor trailer. You mentioned Family Dollar as the prospective client, and to make a swing in there, I think there's a little bit of a problem. It's going to be kind of tight. I would propose that they come up Newhall, come down Chambers Street, take a swing in by the park there, and come up from the rear into the back of the property and make their deliveries there. It'd be a lot easier. Which now brings up a situation of, that I'd like to talk about, and that is Newhall Street. I own property on Newhall Street as well. It's a narrow street, and I would love to see the city get together with Mr. Elkin McCullen. Number one, we get a bridge there that needs repair. Number two, it needs to be widened. Number three, there's a blind boy down there that needs a sign where it's going to be increased traffic. Matter of fact, the grandmother was sitting over here this evening. I think it's an excellent project. I can't, I've been waiting for years to see that Butler School disappear. It was an eyesore, and it brought down the property values in the entire Grove area. That's probably basically where I'm coming from, but I'd like to emphasize the stretch of Newhall Street down to Chambers Street.
But do you think it'd be more difficult for the bigger trucks to come up Newhall Street, though, with being narrow?
My trucks do it all the time.
Are your trucks the same size, Mr. King?
They're smaller than a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
know.
usually, most of the time, what they'd want to do is bring the tractor trailers in right off the highway, come right down onto Gorham Street, and that way there'd be less travel size through the neighborhood. That's what usually we request, so there's less neighborhood impact.
Well, on Livingston Street, many a time, I've seen many accidents at the corner of Livingston Street and Gorham Street. When I'm coming from the south, one of my trucks has to make it and take a right-hand turn. It's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. The swing there is terrible. And I just picture, it's going to be a 35-foot road, am I correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So a tractor-trailer coming in either direction is going to have to swing wide on Gorham Street to come in there into the property. Heard you earlier raise some issues about lights there.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure it's a good idea.
I mean, we just had this comments from the traffic engineer about, because obviously we have to do something with signalization for the fire trucks pulling out.
I agree.
You know, I mean, if you're gonna pull the fire truck out, we gotta make sure the traffic stops.
Chambers Street, the same thing. I know coming out of there last Saturday night myself, trying to get onto Gorham Street off of Chambers Street, I was involved in an accident because of the property right up on the sidewalk. No clear, you know, you're trying to creep out. There'd be issues coming out of this property as well. I'm glad to see that they moved the building back 6 feet, you said? It'll open up the
vision
view.
lanes, yeah.
But I think it's a good project. I'd like to see it go ahead. Hopefully, maybe you can talk to the planning department to take a look at doing something with Prince and widen the rest, going down further in there, because it's going to increase traffic and it's a tough street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to be heard? I'm sorry, anybody else? Anyone else? Anyone else? If not, any of the board members have any questions, comments? Aaron, do you have anything to add before I turn it over? No?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Any of the board members have any questions, comments?
I have a couple questions.
We'll start with Mr. Boyle.
Are you proposing pervious pavement in your parking lots as well?
No, we are not.
So you're going to have a subsurface drainage system in there?
That's correct, yes.
Emptying out into the, where?
Full 100% infiltration into the ground.
Okay, onto your green spaces here.
Underneath the parking lots.
Okay.
It's nice sandy material. It's going to percolate easily. Groundwater's down 7 or 8 feet, so it's perfect for what we're proposing.
Are you going to need the buried infiltration systems?
Well, we're going to do pre-treatment in chambers to take care of particle separation. So it'll be stormwater management compliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
You spoke about having the false window treatments on the sides of the building facing towards the parking lots. Why those and not actual windows?
Well, first of all, they wanted to have some detail on these sides, but not, if you lived there, you wouldn't want people to be able to look out into your property.
Okay, because they're
Okay.
facing into those
Yeah.
houses too. Gotcha.
Another reason is that the retailers want as much wall space as possible as well. And if you go down, like I said, to the CVS on Bridge Street, you really can't tell the difference. I was amazed at how effective a treatment that is. So those are the primary reasons why. And it was recommended by the DPD as well.
Okay. You spoke a lot about being in contact with Eric Eby. Has the issue come up of whether those traffic signals and emergency signals at the intersection of Gorham, Ellsworth, and now Newhall should create a signalized intersection?
We've had brief discussions about it. We don't feel as though the traffic coming out of our project would warrant a full traffic light signalization for the current load that's on Gorham Street. But again, we're still talking with Eric Eby about that.
Well, it seems that as that issue is considered, you should take into account the fact that Newhall Street will now be a through street, going all the way back into the neighborhood, and is likely to become an access point to and from the neighborhood behind it. And it's liable to, and so only analyzing this in terms of existing Gorham, Ellsworth Street traffic plus your project probably isn't going to capture the future use of that intersection.
I'm going to defer this to Mr. Elides.
You know, Joe, I don't maybe disagree that somebody shouldn't be looking at that situation at some point. The problem is that my client, our client, answered an RFP, said what he would do, indicated the expenditures he would make, and has every step of the way done what he was supposed to do. To start throwing things like that, which I think are beyond the scope of what he's required or should be required to do, just isn't fair in my opinion. If the city, if there's a dangerous situation there, then the appropriate department should be looking at it, they should be doing something about it, and Lord knows, I'm familiar with doing things. Let's not forget the money that's being spent to build the new roads, to put in the new sidewalks, and do everything that he said he was going to do. So I don't disagree maybe that somebody's got to look at that situation, but I don't think it's fair to tie it into this project. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, and just as my final comment, I really look at this, my biggest interest in this project is as an amenity that it will provide to the abutting residential neighborhood, providing additional retail opportunities, functioning in many ways the way our traditional neighborhood commercial centers will function, and all of the benefits that they bring to the Lower Highlands neighborhood, the Lower Belvedere neighborhood, all of the areas that have these traditional pedestrian-oriented neighborhood commercial districts. One of those is that there are expanded opportunities for people who will be accessing them on foot. So I'm looking a lot at how these buildings access with people who will be walking up the new Newell Street extension from the Livingston Street end. The Family Dollar building you've got, you walk up, it's got this very direct access. You walk up your new sidewalk to your plaza, walk up that little walkway to your front door. That's a very good direct access. I look at the southern building though, and the pedestrian access there would be to walk up your new sidewalk along the south side of the street, and then take a left and walk through the parking lot along that walkway to the entrance. And that is really a corner. You're not going to think in terms, if you're looking at this mainly in terms of somebody driving up and parking, this wouldn't necessarily occur to you. But if you're thinking of it in terms of people walking from the neighborhood, that's a big out-of-your-way corner. People don't walk on big out-of-the-way corners. And I suspect that what will happen if this is built the way it's shown is that you will develop, is that within a couple of years, there will be a large, what we call a desire line, worn in across your green space, and that little triangle that projects out next to 59 Livingston Street. And so I would suggest that you consider putting in just a small length of sidewalk across there and a crosswalk so that you get a more direct line from the Newhall Street, Livingston Street intersection across your parking lot on the east side to the 6-foot concrete sidewalk on the north side of your south building. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Right, from, yes. should be at the microphone too.
I understand what you're saying, and I think it's probably true, although who knows, they could be cutting through various different places. When you said it, I thought you meant, I was looking at the first opening, at the driveway opening, figuring then coming straight across to the sidewalk from there. But howsoever it is, it's probably not a bad idea to at least do a colored side, a colored, as I think the, Aaron can correct me on this, but I think we often try to differentiate the colors to show us a pedestrian area kind of thing, and I think that would be a good idea.
These internal walkways inside your parking lots, are those just paint? And your crosswalks across Newhall Street also just paint? That would be good to look at. Do they do thermoplastic on porous pavement?
That's a good question. I don't know. I imagine they could, but that'd be something that we need to look into as we move forward with the design for the street. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Pedestrian access from the neighborhood is a real priority for me, because like I said, the benefit of having a real commercial center. Which brings me back to another question. This discussion of you have contacted the abutters, and you've been talking to the abutters. Are you using the word abutter to mean nearby owners of rental property?
Literal abutters, yes.
Okay, but the property owners?
Property owners.
Okay. It would be a very appreciated gesture if whatever effort you could make to also contact tenants could be expended. Their input is just as valuable, and they would provide insights that property owners who don't all live there, apparently many do, and that's good, and that's always positive, wouldn't necessarily be able to provide. So any outreach that could be done in of that type,
No problem. We can
very
do
much
that.
appreciate.
We can do that. That's no problem.
Yep. As I say this, I realize how difficult that can be to, how difficult that type of outreach can be. There could be language issues. There are different levels of interest from people with different lengths of tenancy, but it is something that is worthwhile. The more you can make it work, the better it is. It's been my experience.
Point well made, and we will do that. We want to be good neighbors, too. I think another statement as far as this project goes, which I think we all agree, I'd like to hope we all agree is a great project. This is going to change that whole neighborhood, and it's going to be for the better for those folks. People who've never, it's an underserved neighborhood.
It is.
And so by doing all of these things and adding those sidewalks, and sure, we should probably talk to them and let them know what's going to happen a little. The difficulty with the legal process in this thing, and I think you're alluding to that, is that tenants don't get notices, only the property owners get notices. But the other side of the coin is there are projects in this city that we are all well familiar with that have notoriety, and when there is anything controversial about them, generally speaking, the word gets out and gets around. So, but it's a point well taken, and we're going to make our best efforts to get into all of those people who are budding tenants as well.
Good. That's good. That's good to hear. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of things. So I do think it looks like a good project, so we want to make sure we do what we can to push it forward. I had questions about screening. You know, we have single-family houses along the edge of the parking lot here. Looks like you've got some shrubs along the edge. Is that the extent of what you're going to do for screening to those properties? We have various shrubs and trees opposed to the outside areas. There's also fencing here as well, existing fencing. And there's also fencing along the perimeter. Existing fencing? Okay. I mean, I think I'd like to see us, fence. And Aaron, I guess I'm looking for feedback from you on this, but, my concern is, well, obviously this is going to be an improvement over an abandoned school. It also has the effect of opening it up to Gorham Street, right? And that can be detrimental to neighborhoods, especially, these single-family homes. And I'm just wondering, has thought been given to an appropriate screen that would lessen that effect?
We've had discussions during the design review committee meetings with the design team for the applicant, and that has been discussed. Generally speaking, from a zoning perspective, the screen needs to be opaque, and there's two ways of achieving that. One is with the fence that is a stockade fence, or with a landscape species that is of a height and density and, year-round foliage. We see arborvitaes a lot, but that's not the only option. That would be planted at a density that provides an opaque screen between the parking lot and the residential structure. So I think based on the plans in my recollection, is that the solution was to have landscaping provide the opaque screen, and that the fence that's there could provide a little bit more of, a physical barrier.
Yeah. So that makes sense, except that as it's shown here, it doesn't look like the shrubs is enough there to create a real screen. Would you consider, changing that with an eye toward screening, either a more dense, shrub line, arborvitaes, whatever it is, or a fence with smaller shrubs in front of it? That can be attractive as well. Okay. Good. The other question I had was, so you have obviously a vertical granite curb on all the street-facing areas, and it looks like you have Cape Cod berm on the interior of the parking lot. Okay, so all around you've got the Cape Cod berm. There's no places where the pavement just runs right into the grass.
It's all curbed.
Okay, good. And the last thing I guess I had was also regarding landscaping. There's always some confusion about this, where is it now? This part of the code when it comes to landscaping in parking lots. And talking about 6.1.9 right now, landscaped open space. And it says that when you have a parking space with more than 10 spaces, 5% of that parking space in the interior of the lot should be committed to landscaping. And oftentimes, people landscape around the edges of the lot, which is good. But when you get a parking lot of this size, if you can break it up at all with some kind of a landscaped island, it just looks so much better. And I know it's a little harder to care for because, you got to plow around it and stuff. But, when I look at lots in the city where we've asked, to have some landscape islands in the middle of the lot, it just looks so much better than the sea of asphalt. So I'm wondering if, you can look at some spaces in here where maybe you can put, a couple of landscape islands. And it looks like you have plenty of parking. I was looking at the code. I think the parking exceeds what you need. Am I right about that?
That's correct, yes.
So even if you had to, take out a parking spot to create a couple of landscape islands, to me, that would be preferred. I don't know what you think about that.
So this is one of the exercises we've been going through is maneuverability of vehicles. So we're trying to leave as much clear area as possible. But what I can say is that the zoning ordinance requires us to put in 10 trees.
Yeah.
And we've proposed 17. So we're trying to be respectful of the ordinance and trying to comply with as much as we can, but we're also, I think you can see with this plan, trying to incorporate a lot of landscaping, a quality plaza,
Yeah.
and this flagpole landscaped area,
Mm-hmm.
and also a quality landscaped area on the street side of Gorham to help buffer the parking lot as well. So we're just trying to balance everything out as much as possible. What we're really trying to do is create as much clear area within the parking areas themselves in order to get a delivery truck in here.
Gotcha. I get it.
So we've been trying the best we can with that.
So all I'll say is if you could, like, for instance, we have this in the lower retail building here, you have this hashed area that's
Yeah, that's to try to get more maneuverability.
For the
with larger
trucks.
trucks, yeah. In fact, we're trying to even have this as a slope masonry unit to get some vehicle tires over the edges of that if need be. We're only gonna have deliveries early in the morning. There's gonna be no deliveries while there's anybody here
Yeah.
in the parking lot. So we've been doing the turning radiuses based on the fact that there won't be anything in the parking lots, including cars.
I see.
So, but mind you, we're still very restricted with the way that we're laid out right now to have that maneuverability that
Sure.
we're trying to acquire, so.
All right, I can understand that. I'm okay. If you're willing to make sure you properly screen, completely screen all of these single-family homes, from the parking lot, maybe with a fence or with added shrubs.
Absolutely, yes.
Then, and as you continue to sort of design this, think about the internal island. If there's a way that you can work an internal island, I understand the thing.
Yeah, right now, again, I'll reiterate, it's really tight right now. We're even thinking about the possibility of removing a space here
Mhm.
and taking this little bump out island here, possibly.
Yeah,
because
that's
we're
the only,
really-
I noticed that. I was happy about that. I was going to ask you to extend that a little bit.
Yeah, we've been, I've said this before, I think this is our 20th
Yeah.
concept plan, and we're trying to work around with different sized buildings, and the tenants want a minimum of 25 parking spaces, so we're trying to accommodate that and trying to get the parking areas and how do they want to unload
Yeah.
their vehicles and everything, so.
I can appreciate that, and I do like the little plaza thing you have and the flagpole. It's good, but all I'm saying is that anytime, I go into a parking lot in the city and it's just a sea of asphalt, and I grit my teeth. And then there's some that have come through here, where I walk through and I'm like, yeah, we did that, it looks so much better. It's
Yeah.
amazing the difference it makes if
It's
you can
great
get
when
a
it's
couple
pedestrian
internal islands.
vehicles. You
The
can do that
answer's
easily
yes.
with,
What's that?
And the answer is yes, and we'll work with Aaron on
Okay,
that to get that.
All right, thank you.
just a lot easier to achieve when you just have the pedestrian vehicles going in and out of a parking lot.
Yeah, got it.
And so anyways, we won't discuss it.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fischett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a lot's been covered. I agree with Mr. General, and you obviously you've agreed, is the screening along that east side of the parking lot where all the single-family homes are, just to make sure that obviously provides the proper screening, so obviously I agree with that. My question is, and I know the traffic engineer, Eric Eby, did not comment, and I was just curious if there was any discussion. I just see this extension of Newhall Street, as I try to visualize this, I think it would appear that, I think people pulling in and out of here, this is really going to seem more like an extension of the whole development, more of an exit out of a parking lot of a shopping plaza than it's going to be an extension of Newhall Street, a residential street. I think it has that feel that you're in a plaza, a connected plaza, and I'm just curious, especially with the wider exit and entrance onto Gorham Street, if there was any discussion regarding markings for a lane. I mean, I can see people really trying to pull out of there, cutting across the medium of the Newhall extension to take a left onto Gorham. I don't, was there any discussion regarding that exit and entrance at all, as far as just markings?
Well-
you know, a designate, you know, a clear designated right-hand lane and a left-hand lane as you're
Yeah,
pulling
we
on
can
it.
work with Eric Eby on that and, you know, make sure that, you know, and get his input on how the line marking configuration should be here when it intersects with Gorham Street.
Yeah, I just think that needs to be, and again, I have Eric, just to have Eric take a look at that. I mean, it might be a case where he doesn't think it's warranted, but I just think I think that's something that would, I think it warrants further investigation.
I will say that, excuse me, that given our restriction with the 35-foot right-of-way width and the 24 feet of pavement, that we really only have room for one lane exiting and one lane entering the plaza, so to speak. And that if we were thinking about accommodating a turn lane, then you'd add another 12 feet, 10 feet or so to that overall width.
No, I guess my concern is because of what you've just mentioned, I can see someone pulling out, just thinking, I mean, really, to take a left and coming right across there, and then somebody trying to take a left off of Gorham Street into the project, the car's gonna be, you know, crossing. Is it, oh, okay, because again, I don't see any of that on here.
We have retained a traffic engineer to work with us.
Okay.
We just haven't gotten to that aspect of the project yet, but our traffic engineer will be working with Eric Eby and provide whatever line work is necessary to be put in the roadway as what would be warranted.
Okay, I would have been, I would have, yeah, that would have been helpful to see along with the package, but that's fine, okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to say. I think Matt did a good job going through the items DPD had outlined, so certainly fine with that, thank you.
Mr. Lockhart?
Just one, the buffer along the east side of the development, that was really my only concern, and how that impacted the neighbors there, that housing along the east side. But I think as long as you're meeting and talking with those butters and showing them what you're doing there and giving them a chance to give some input, that should be adequate. Just a clarification on a note here regarding, on your print, regarding the fencing. There's some existing fencing there that says fencing along northeast of butter property line to be relocated or reused as needed. There's
We're gonna
nothing there
take
that
their
can be
existing
reused, is there?
fencing and put it back against their property. It was encroaching.
I mean, most of that's just junk, isn't it, that's there now?
There's a boat sitting
With the vines.
actually right here.
Oh, yeah, all right.
You know, so,
I mean, I just didn't see anything that I'd.
yeah, so we're gonna do what's needed in order to make that right and bring the fence back to where it needs to
Yeah,
be
all right,
and work with the
okay, that's all I
others.
have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Malavich?
I grew up in this neighborhood. My mother lived in the Murphy house down in Lowell, the right-hand corner. I grew up in Frank Kingston, place of business. I like this project. I think it really looks good. I want to note that Newhall Street from Livingston to Chambers Street, there is nothing on there except one property. So there is no neighborhood down Newhall Street until you get to Chambers Street.
And by the ballpark area?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
So the chance of a lot of pedestrian movement up Newhall Street is not going to be a big factor. It's a small, tight neighborhood, as Frank knows well. I think this would be a boom to the neighborhood, and I don't think there's a need for traffic signals at Ellsworth and the new road. People speed up and down. And I think any of the obstruction by a traffic light will just clog up the roadway, especially with more street always down. But I like this project.
Thank you. Aaron, what do we need? 2 votes, one for the subdivision and one for the site plan?
There's actually 3 separate votes. There's a subdivision and then site plan review for each separate site.
Oh, okay.
It's presented as a single comprehensive project because they kind of work together as a single project,
So we
because they were in
need,
separate parcels.
The subdivision, then site plan approval on one side, then site plan approval on the other?
Correct.
Top and, if you look at top and bottom?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, lot 1 and lot 2.
Mr. Chairman, as a matter of procedure, I wonder if, and perhaps the applicants can speak on this, depending on what ends up happening on Lot 2, might there be changes which would,
Possibly.
uh,
I just don't know. In other words, we have no specific tenant for that. And I was at some point going to say, who knows, we may come back for modification at some point down the road. Hold on, Steve Jonkus has something to add to that.
If I could just add a brief point. The way that's proposed right now would be for a single retail user, but that building could also be subdivided for several tenants. And in either case, the way the site plan works for that now, it could accommodate the multi-tenant use or the single user. And if there's any dramatic change because of future tenancy, then we'd prefer to come back for approval, or modification to the plan.
okay, so the question in my mind is whether we should act on the second site plan approval now, or would there be, or should we act on that when there is a proposal and we have a final design for that property?
I would suggest that we vote on it now, then bring it back to visit modification, the way the thing is set out. Obviously, I'm pretty sure they come in and ask for the modification before they change it.
Yeah, right. That's true.
As Mr. Junkus indicated they would. So, I mean, because I think all the consideration by the city departments has been given, you know, to put it like that, but if they do want to come in and change it, then it'd be a modification just to one of the lots. I mean, I think the most important thing, we'd have to vote on the subdivision first and then the 2 lots individually, but I think they addressed most of the comments, and obviously, I think they indicated that they're still willing to work with the DPD for the type of renderings they're gonna come up with. They still wanna work with the city engineer in regards to the road area. They still wanna continue to work with the traffic engineer in regards to the signalization that affects the fire department. It sounds, and I mean, it sounds like the ongoing situation to continue to work with the city departments to improve the project. So I think maybe that would be something we could consider by way of a conditional approval.
Now, where this is a subdivision approval that will be constructing public infrastructure, would this include, would it be appropriate to include lot releases or bonding the way we do for a traditional residential subdivision?
I'll refer to Aaron on that first.
Sure. The subdivision would require a covenant as any other subdivision would require to make sure that the infrastructure is built out prior to either the sale. Often it's sale of the property. We've tied, similar to Walgreens, we've tied commercial projects to the certificate of occupancy. And so a covenant can be put in place to preserve or protect the city and ensure that this new street's constructed as approved. And then, of course, the applicant could choose to post a bond to open up if the street isn't completed at that point. There's options for writing up a covenant for that. And Walgreens serves as a good model for that.
Okay, thank you. There has been some discussion about further discussions that's needed with I believe the city engineer or the water department. There was that question about the hydrant, for example. Are those matters that need to get straightened out that should get straightened out before we act on the subdivision approval? Or are those matters that could be handled post-approval, perhaps, through the covenant procedure?
What I would recommend that the board has, I think, done most recently with these projects is provide a conditional approval if they feel that it makes sense. But once the final plan has been determined through discussions with different departments, that plan be created and submitted for the planning board's final review, so that all the moving pieces that are impacted by the different departments' comments and requirements don't impact the intent of the site layout and the subdivision. And you have the opportunity to review and approve it at a future date.
Well, we certainly need the subdivision plan voted on, signed, and recordable.
Correct, absolutely.
You have site plan issues if you don't have the subdivision, right?
Yeah, you gotta have that first.
Yeah, just to be clear, that the decision, the board could make a decision tonight on all those with the condition that
Right.
the details be worked out by the departments with the final plan submitted.
Right.
It's unlikely to change the subdivision of the lots and the street layout, but
The
the
subdivision is
utility
the
location, that sort of
foremost
thing.
consideration, right?
Correct.
Any further questions? If not, I'd make a motion that we approve the subdivision with the conditions that they continue to work with the city engineer for the layout of the roadway and the traffic engineer. And any other conditions any board members feel appropriate at this point?
And that they resubmit a finalized plan for our review.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to add in reference the memo from DPD, the items called out in the memo of September 12th from DPD?
The question I have, some of them they agreed with and some of them they didn't. Some of them, they weren't coming close, they were gonna go for variances for. So I think part of them, like Matt, when he said you were too close here, and he says we'll go and seek the variance instead. So, and I don't know whether some of those are more, Aaron, your comments, a lot of them were more site-specific than subdivision, correct? Or both?
That's correct. They're pretty much all related to the site plan.
Right, to the site plan. Okay. So that's why, so I'd say for the subdivision would be to continue to work with the city engineer for the layout, because especially where it's a different type of street coming in, and to deal with the traffic engineer, for the markings and the pavements and any signalization they feel appropriate. And then they could always bring it back to us for final approval after they've had further discussion, obviously with DPD, the city engineer, and the traffic engineer.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
A motion made and second in regards to the subdivision. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. In regards to the site plan on lot number 1, I'd make a motion that we approve the site plan with the condition that the applicant work with DPD for the architectural plans and also to continue to work with DPD for the landscaping plans, as suggestions were made tonight. I think Matt got most of the consideration on that about the buffer zone in the back and the fencing in that area as well. I'd also ask you to continue to work with the city engineer in regards to any other comments that they have that may come up in regards to the site plan. And again, the traffic engineer in regards to the layout of any construction in the site as well as outside the site. And also to consider the pedestrian walkway cut through that was brought up by Mr. Boyle, And any other comments that any board members that have at this time? Anything else?
What lot is this?
I think Joe wanted to cut through, which they said they had no problem for it, for the pedestrian-friendly access coming off of Newhall Street.
Yeah, lot 2.
A lot, okay, I'm sorry.
We're talking about
Okay,
lot
I'm still
two.
in lot 1, okay.
Triangular
Okay, I'll get to that.
landscaped area.
Okay.
Mr.
I'll get to that on lot, okay, I'm sorry, 'cause we're still on lot 1. Okay, we'll get to that on lot 2 then.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add specifically, the applicant provide full screening along the eastern border of the property with either stockade fence or appropriate line of bushes.
Also, and continue to work with the abutter, to meet with the abutters regarding that issue.
Okay, I'll amend those as recommended by other board members.
Mr. Chairman, rather than including a specific reference to the pedestrian cut-through in the site plan approval for Lot 2, I would propose that we include that would be appropriately covered in the language about the applicant continuing to work with the traffic engineer on the pedestrian design.
Okay.
That certainly falls within that, and I feel staff's now been informed that sort of thing is a consideration.
Okay, we'll get to that when we get to lot 2, because right now we're still in lot 1.
Yes, but my point is I would like that same condition to be included in both Lot 1 and Lot 2 for the applicant to work with the traffic engineer on the pedestrian access and layout.
Okay, we'll incorporate that as well. Do you have any question on those conditions, Aaron? You want us to read those back, or do you have them?
If you could just read them back for me one more time.
To work with DPD, with the architectural plans and the landscaping plans. To work with the city engineer and the traffic engineer. Also for the traffic engineer to consider the pedestrian effect on the site for Lot 1, as indicated by Mr. Boyle. And also the screening on the back of, mostly on the rear part of Lot 1, was it, Mr. Jim?
Provide full screening along the eastern border of the property with either a stockade fence or appropriate line of bushes.
You all set with that, Aaron?
Yes, I think I do have that, yeah.
Okay.
Can always catch it on LTC.
So I'll make a motion on that. Anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Chair votes yes, and I may make a motion, so that motion carries. And then I'll make the appropriate motion for the same thing on site plan approval for lot number 2, for the applicant to work with DPD for the architectural and the landscaping plan,
I'll second that.
the city engineer and the traffic engineer in this, in regards to the traffic layout and the city engineer's improvement, as well as the pedestrian walkthrough, any conditions they have, as well as what Matt said, he'd consider putting that little strip in there so people can walk through there. And to continue to try to work with the landscaping plan for the buffer zone for the rear of lot number 2, to try to make sure that it's fully screened to a good ability from the neighbors. And any other, yes, Ms. Lockhart?
And to consider what Mr. Jensen brought up about the
Yeah,
landscaped islands.
If possible, for landscape island, if it does, you know,
Just consider it.
consider that when you talk to the city engineer, to see if that's gonna affect you. When you're talking to the city engineer, see how the landscapes will fit in the islands, if not,
Okay.
how the flow goes, so you can speak with
Sure,
Mr.
I'll
Evie on
show
that.
'em the
I mean,
turning.
there is a
And then,
regulations.
in regards to all of them, then have the plans brought back before the planning board for final approval.
Right.
You've got the same full screening along the eastern border of the,
So the screening, yeah. So basically, the motion for the site plan on lot 2 is basically consistent with the motion for lot 1. So that's a motion for lot 2. We have a second on lot 2 for the site plan?
I'll second that.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes, no opposition, so that motion carries as well.
Thank you very much.
If I could just,
And
Good night.
the other modification will be, if any modification, take them back before the planning board.
I was just gonna say, was part of those conditions that a final plan, once
We
been
submit it.
worked out, would come back to the planning board for review? Okay.
And obviously, any modifications, you'll come back, Matt, right?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. and members of the planning board.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
Obviously, Aaron, if they do any modifications to Lot 2, any modifications to Lot 2 to come back. Good luck, Mr. Junkus. Okay. Okay, moving along quickly, we have a zoning amendment for temporary construction trailers. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to the ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Appendix A, therefore entitled Zoning by amending Section 4.3 entitled Accessory Uses. The amendment will insert new subsections regarding temporary construction trailers under Section 4.36 of the code. We did receive a thing in our packet tonight indicating, let me get the request. Where was it, Aaron? This was a meeting that was before the city council. City council referred it to us, I believe. By adding a new section 1, 2, and 3 of section 4 shall read, construction trailers will be prohibited from being placed on construction development sites prior to 90 days before construction begins. Construction trailers must be removed from development sites within 90 days after construction is completed, and construction trailers shall be prohibited at any residential project site of 6 units or less. This matter is before us for recommendation only, then goes back before the city council for the final vote. Anybody here would like to speak in regards to the zoning change, in regards to temporary construction trailers? Anybody want to speak? Anyone want to speak? No, anybody want to speak? Hearing none? What's the request of the board?
Chairman, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think, Aaron, you said this came up because it was at a city council meeting and one of the councilors brought it forward.
Yeah, this was generated from a council motion during a meeting a little while back. I think it was a couple meetings ago, about a month ago. I'm not entirely sure the purpose of it.
You know who brought it up?
Why 90 days? I mean, it takes 3 months to move a trailer.
Pardon me?
I'm just curious about the 90-day.
It was actually, I don't know if it shows on that draft. During the reading of the ordinance, it was changed from 90 to 60 days.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
60
a little
days.
more reasonable, I think.
So that,
Unrealistic.
So I'm taking, there must have been some trailers on site, some location,
something
that stuck
happened
on for a
somewhere.
period of time, was brought to council's attention, and they wanted to.
I suspect that was something along those lines, yeah. I'm not aware of a particular project where that was the case, but I think the concern is that a construction trailer is placed on a site way before construction starts and becomes a nuisance or a site nuisance, or following construction, it's just left there for a long time.
Yeah.
Usually, I think we don't see that, but there's just concern that this, I think the idea was that this tightens it up a little bit so that there's some enforcement behind
Can I
it.
just ask, what's the feeling of DPD for 6 units or less? Do you feel they need something for that size, 6 units or less?
Typically, I don't think you see a construction trailer for a project with 6 residential units or less. One of the concerns that, I'll bring up, it's not going to be a problem here, but one of the concerns we had was, in the case of a catastrophe, someone's house burnt down, or their business or multifamily burnt down, we have seen people set up a temporary trailer on their property to live in while the home is being reconstructed. There's an exemption in Mass General Law, Chapter 48, to allow that. We can't prevent that from a zoning perspective. So I think this is a very valid concern, if your house did burn down, you would still be able to have a temporary trailer on your property to live in while your home's being constructed. That's a different temporary use. I just wanted to point that out, because I think that's...
Which is good understanding, I mean, for anybody's hardship.
Yeah. And I get by definition too, the construction trailer really is not meant to be something that's habitable anyways. That's meant to have an
That's
office.
exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They put the temporary lines up so they can communicate from it, so.
If somebody wanted to, I mean, if it was 6 units or less, and somebody wanted to put a construction trailer there is a process to allow him to do that?
It'd be a variance in this case.
So-
There's no special permit process, it'd be a variance process.
I
They'd have to show a hardship.
Shut the door on that, okay.
I guess the lawyer in me asks, what's the definition of when construction begins?
Put the shovel in the ground?
That's a great question. I think
Walk away for 6 months?
the challenge is in the front end. I think, as far as enforcement, we can kind of judge that based on when someone's applied for a building permit.
Okay,
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we had the benefit of some input from some people from the construction industry here. I don't know if this is reasonable or not. I don't know if I can sit here and anticipate all of the implications that this would have. I'm not a builder.
I mean, I think the purpose of it is obviously not leaving, trailers in the neighborhoods or on the city streets. I'm like, unless there's a valid reason, like Aaron pointed out. I mean, 60 days is still 2 months. I mean, really.
I would think that they're not gonna move a trailer on the site until they're ready to occupy it and get going. You know,
I'm sure they're
just
expensive to lease them, whichever they do.
prohibit storage of trailers on a potential site.
Because usually they want to get their construction stuff off and move to the next site as
Yeah.
well. Because they probably either rent those trailers, I imagine, or some of them might even own them if they have a big enough business.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
But some of these people probably either rent these trailers, or some of them might own it, depending on how big the contractors are.
Yeah, they might, but I think often they're rented. I think they're leased. I don't.
So this cuts
There
down
might be some
yeah,
contractors that
cuts
own
down
them.
2 months on the leasing for.
And I will say, I've had some experience with projects that, through financing, and I can tell you, I've done, because I've never paid attention to the lead time in which the trailer was put on, it came off, but 60 days, in my recollection, doesn't appear to be
Undue hardship?
an undue hardship
Yeah,
to
I
the
think
bill. I don't recall.
You can think of it as 2 months, I mean.
Yeah, that, should
Mr.
we
Chairman,
do
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of this zoning amendment.
We have a motion made on the floor for approval. Anyone to second that motion?
I'd second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? That motion carries. That we make a recommendation to the city council on that matter. Moving along, that completes public hearings and new business. I know we have notices from budding towns and notices. I think that we received a notice from NEMCOG, I believe, in the packet. You want to address that, Jeremy? I thank you, the board member, for that.
workshops?
I got it in here. Here we go.
I have it here.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's actually, it's the 50th anniversary of NEMCOG, and I know they were sending out invitations to past board members and executive directors, and I think it's going to be a special evening because, again, it's celebrating the history of NEMCOG, and I believe we had a NEMCOG meeting last night, and it was just revealed that Congresswoman Nikki Songus will be the guest speaker. So I know it's not on this card, but I know that'll be a special attraction as well. So it is October 16th at the Westford Regency at 6 p.m. And Beverly Woods did tell us there's some severe construction going on in the roadway there, so you may want to allow for a little bit of extra time to get there. But if you can, I really would suggest if you can get there. I think it would be it's a good evening because they're going to, usually in the past at these meetings, they talk about what NEMCOG is going to be looking at for the upcoming year, but this is really looking back as to what NEMCOG has accomplished over the 50 years and how it's evolved. So I certainly would encourage anybody that has that evening available to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the board members have any updates? If not, I just have actually two. One, I know we have to hold our election meeting for officers. We usually do it in our general meeting in September, so we can put that on for the next meeting. Okay. Another thing that Aaron and I were talking about, and I don't know if we have to amend this to our rules, but a question came up was, and Aaron and I talked about this briefly, when someone comes in for a pre-application plan, we were going to request that maybe before they can come in for the public hearing, that it be at least a 1 month period of time. because over the past 3 times, what we've seen a lot of times is those changes don't get made accordingly in the interim, and what it does, it backs up the meetings and backs them up, and sometimes it's a little unfair for the neighbors who have to come down for the first public hearing. That way, I think it gives the applicant a chance to maybe digest some of the concerns we had. I know Aaron was thinking about whether they would change it administratively. I said if not, we can put it on the agenda to see if we wanted to amend it in our rules, and that way the board would have some input on that, and that way you guys can think about whether you feel that's appropriate for the next meeting. But I thought maybe we could just mention it, we'll put it on the agenda. So if they do a pre-application, they have to wait technically a month, which would be 2 meetings before they come back, instead of just the next meeting. Then hopefully they can digest some of our comments and concerns. So that was something we were discussing internal between Adam and I, because he said they started talking about it, and I said maybe if that's something, if the board wants to do, we can incorporate that. So besides that, I have no further comments. Anybody else have any further comments? If not,
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'll say, we probably should have done this at the beginning of the meeting, but Lowell lost one of its prominent citizens this week, and Attorney Joe Donahue, patriarch of a well-known Lowell family, dad of former city councilor Matt Donahue, so I just thought we don't have to do a moment of silence, but neighbors of mine, right?
nice people.
Just thought it might be worth mentioning that, and our sympathies go out to the family.
He's been before us, but it's been a long time since he came before us. Yeah, I remember him coming before us a long time ago. Yeah, he came for that development right down around by Danis's Market, some condo association in there, and he was always a professional and a pleasure. Yeah. So he'll be deeply missed. So thanks for bringing that up, Steve. So, anything else from any board members? If not, Aaron, I know we bumped a couple of things from tonight to the next meeting. Anything else we have scheduled on? So if you can think of offhand.
There's nothing scheduled at the moment.
Okay, so we have 2 things that we continued, so.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing further, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion's made and seconded by Mr. Fischett.
Second, yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night, and thank you, everyone.